Hello everybody, sorry about the technical hiccups there. Setup time. We should be good though. Should indeed be good. And this is going to be yet another episode of SA2 Hero Story PB Analyses. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Emerldd's PB. He's sitting on a very low 38, a really respectable time. But I know for a fact that Emerldd can bring his time down lower. So I'm going to be having a look through and see what we can find to comment on. Even if there's elements of play that I've commented on in previous analyses, I'm still going to touch on them again just for the sake of being comprehensive and because anyone can watch this after the fact, learn some stuff. So let's just begin and see what we can find.
Everybody looks so fun, dude. Even Smash 4 characters from like before that like didn't seem fun, like they seem fun now. Can we talk about Robin, female Robin?
Okay, that's good. This is a good start already.
Her skin, bro. She looks sick. Like she looks way better. She's horrible.
Awesome. No, that was good. I like that. Thank you, Emerldd.
Does Fair still have a sour spot?
Here we go. All right.
That's so funny. If it does, that's so crazy.
Okay, so starting off, fairly regularly. There's not the double jump, ramp jump thing here, but I also don't do that and can't really demonstrate it myself. But, normal so far.
Is Robin actually decent now? She's way better. I haven't really seen the changes to Robin. All I know
I like ramen as well. I should eat it more often.
She doesn't start with Levin Sword. She like gets it.
Okay, so I have to manually pause the Twitch VOD. So one thing that should go without saying is that the first thing that you can really do to start a conventional hero story run is the spin dash jump, and it's a toss-up whether you want to undercharge the spin dash as you did here so that you have less speed and more time to land on the rail, or if you want to prioritize getting more speed and making it a bit more difficult to land. But yeah, it kind of is what it is, and the collision on the rail is a little iffy, where I personally find that the further you are to the left, the easier it is to end up on the rail, rather than being too far to the right. Like you can see here that it's like shifting Sonic to the right, but then you still ended up, I think, on the left anyway. But you had the right idea, but this is just awkward, and the best you can really do is just play with it a little bit. I see, Emerldd, thanks for letting me know. Okay.
Honestly, kind of makes sense, just because
So the right idea was played there, using the spin dash on this staircase to conserve the speed, rather than on the vertex before the staircase.
Popped off at the beginning of a game. And you got
So this is going to be a C skip, yeah, okay.
You run out of your Levin Sword, and then you wouldn't be able to.
So just a regular C skip. Alright, so let's see how you handle the rail section here. Okay, so just going to watch this first and then play this back. Yeah, this is a bit of a problem right here. So I've got some things to talk about here. I'll just watch the rest of the rail section first. Okay, so let's run this back a little bit.
And I don't know if she'll be better without. You got somebody to kill percent.
So the first thing that I can really talk about is, first of all, I've got to get up to and get to C skip myself. So the first thing I noticed was the way that you landed after triggering the skip, which is to say you went to the right. I used to do that, but nowadays I personally prefer holding the control stick to the left. I don't have the input cam up here, but I'm just going to trigger the skip first. Please. Get the rings out of the way as well. So I'm just going to have to get the skip first. Please, dude. Game is really good. Okay, so what I prefer to do nowadays is just hold hard left on the control stick, and if I do it here, you'll hopefully see the effect that it's going to have. If you're in the wrong position from triggering the skip, it can send you on the other side of the rails. But in most cases, it should just do this. This was the result of holding hard left on the control stick. You end straight here, and from here you can just do a short hop and then a homing attack cancel to like up left, mostly up with a little bit of left, because the problem that you have with your other approach is that if you're on the far right hand side here, there's more distance to cover towards the rails, and that just makes it harder to judge the actual direction to go, whereas here it's honestly just a short hop and a homing attack cancel like that. So I got a bit of an awkward camera here, but this also lines me up pretty nicely with the next thing that I want to talk about, with the jumps between the individual rails, because you missed the first jump, and then it's much harder to recover from there. A visual cue that I like to use is if you look at these wall posters, like there's this poster, and this poster, once Sonic is past this third wall poster, I find that you're in pretty good position to just be able to jump and then homing attack to the next rail. Like this. So then again here, 1, 2, 3, and Sonic is just in the right spot. I don't think you have an input cam on your stream, but I'm going to have another look at what Sonic is doing. Well, first of all, I'm going to have to see if you're on the rails at the right time here. I don't think you will be after this point, but we'll see.
Her fucking, what's it called, got removed. Her, checkmate.
Okay, kind of were. Okay, so I can't really see what directional input you're using here, but I can provide a couple of comparison points here myself. I'm just going to go back up the staircase here. Okay, so this is about approximately where you start to skip from. So this is, once I get on the rail, going to be like just getting a regular one, if the camera cooperates at all. So for this direction change, what I've seen a lot of people do is use left and right input. This actually isn't the best way to take this particular corner. I'm going to use left and right input here, and you're going to see that Sonic does a lot of tilting on the rails. Like, Sonic is tilting around a lot, and there's actually quite a lot of speed loss that results from that. So if I go back and do it again from the top, this time when I get to that corner, for the first corner that I need to turn, I'm going to be tapping up, and then for the second corner, I'm going to be tapping down. And you should see that the result of that should be that Sonic barely tilts on the rail, which means that not any speed is being lost, pretty much. Again, if I can get on the rail here. See how like Sonic just stays completely upright there? That ultimately means that more speed is being conserved. So if you're not already doing that, that is something that I would definitely recommend. Anyway, so let's just get back to here and see how truck section goes. So, like, if you can get into truck section on the far left side, it is better, but it's very difficult to do with that camera. Not a fan of, yeah, just the timing here in general. This truck section is pretty touch and go.
But honestly, I played.
Yeah, truck section is just difficult, and like, you use a different method than I do as well, so it's hard for me to just like say, oh well, just do what I do and it'll go better, because I'm not really intending to tell people to completely change the way that they play. But there is definitely a lot to be said for just trying to get a consistent method down for for this truck section, and to at least be confident in what you're doing to make sure that you will get the same timing for each, for each attempt. One thing I can show on the first hill, a lot of people like ask why I go down the center, and I can at least show that it sets me up quite nicely for making sure I at least get over the first hill. Because, okay, let's just assume I have a neutral entry. If you are in like the center of the road, then Sonic will automatically get unrolled from the spin dash from hitting an object at a certain point, and you can basically react to that by just holding B to start another spin dash, and it should give you the correct timing to either go over the hill or at least touch the speed pads, which will push you over the hill. And as long as you're in the center of the road, you also won't hit the ramp. I'll show what I mean here. So I'm just going to let this roll. Okay, it actually didn't do it for me there, which is nice. I'm going to die and see if I can do that again. Yeah, it's hard to catch up with the truck. Back here. Cheers, dude. I'll give this just one more go. So you can see here how Sonic is automatically unrolled. That's what should happen, like every time when you're in this position. And then just as soon as this happens, I'm just going to unpause and hold B to charge another spin dash. And you can see my positioning was wrong there being on the ramp, but the timing was right to either go over the hill or be on the speed pad. So that's like an option you could consider. And then from there, just play the truck section however is most comfortable for you. I don't normally like use this method of going onto the left here, but as long as you're not at max speed, it does work fairly reliably. Like right now, I'm just neutral sticking. And then, okay, I'm just gonna go back into truck section like this. And show that for the last hill, there is a definite visual cue method that you can use if you're not already using it. Please stop giving me line dashes. So once you're going down this hill, I'm just going to pause buffer, and once you see this ramp on the left-hand side, like once you've passed this, you can just unroll and re-roll the spin dash. And you should have the right timing to be going over this hill. And pretty much you can just react to it as soon as you see it and it will work. Like I'll do it all just in one go here. Like that was quite an early spin dash, that was almost too early. So you can see that that's quite a nice method there. But either way, largely like a decent city escape. Like you've got a decent understanding of what to do at the start, and just learning how to consistently deal with the rail sections and avoid any silly time losses where the seconds just leak away from not being able to get on the rails. As if you've got a couple of methods to make sure you at least get on the rails, that can really help.
I don't know.
So anyway, Bigfoot. Let's see what we've got here.
Corn looks really fun. Like I would consider playing corn.
One of the problems with Twitch VODs is that I can't skip small increments like I can on YouTube VODs. Like, on YouTube VODs, I can just use hotkeys to skip 5 seconds at a time, which is really helpful, but I'll just have to do any skipping like that manually here. Okay, so front box method.
Because I still love the way she plays.
Good, that's a really good hit too. Yeah, this is good actually. This is really good. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about Bigfoot. That was really good. If anything, the first hit was apparently slow because you like didn't end up with a 21:39. Like it didn't look to me like there was any iframe duration between hits 2, 3, and 4. So it's hit 1, if anything, that can be improved. But I don't have a specific way to do that, and it's chaining the hits together that's the important thing, and not getting stuck on the boxes, which like you've got down. That was really good.
How fucked characters like
Cannot fault that.
They get like an engine like nerf just because of the fact.
Alright, well, the knuckle stages is where I'm expecting to have the most to talk about. Like right here, for instance, that first 3-piece check was inefficient, and then you had to manually check it and it still wasn't there. I'm expecting to have the most to talk about with your knuckle stages, but we'll see. Yeah, so first of all, you had near the 6 pillars, and it was the piece that wasn't pinging for piece 1. When you entered the stage, the radar wasn't pinging. So if you don't already know, this means that you will have one of these two back rocks. If it's already pinging green when you enter the stage, it will be one of the 2 rocks that are closer to you when you start the stage. Just something to be aware of.
They had like literally one of the best air dodges in the game.
And of course, 3-piece checks you can be like doing around here, up here, and the 4 whirling eyes pieces around here and on the other side, if you can keep an eye out for it. There's a lot of 3-piece checks you can be doing around here. Rather than like just looking for a hint here, I would just go towards Sandy Path anyway. Because what's typically going to happen is that if you don't get a ping by the time you're like around this spot on Sandy Path, then you don't have anything over here. Like this is as far as you're going to get without a ping. And if you get a ping around here, then it means you've got the Farfucker Sandy Path, like the guy up here. But if you don't have a ping like when you're around here, like by this pillar, then you just don't have a piece over here, and it's going to be something like suspended ceiling or bottom of a pillar on the other side of the stages. Like this. So in other words, if you'd gone towards the Sandy Path, you would have gotten like barely into the Sandy Path without a ping, and that in itself would have told you that it was on the other side of the stage. But then if you do get a ping, then you then have the other problem of needing to figure out, if you don't already have a hint, which piece it is you've got, because there are a lot of different piece twos, yeah, on the Sandy Path. And the game has a funny way of making sure you get the one that you're not actively checking for when you're actively going to each location. It's weird. Just, yeah, something to be aware of. So this means that by the other token, it's likely that you're going to have the last piece either on the sandy path or back down at the bottom, like something like between two stone statues if you missed it. Yeah, sandy path, last piece. So this is not the moving one, so this is the one under the weight. Like, this is always going to be the one that's moving along, which you could have seen as a free piece, or it's going to be that one under the weight if it's piece 3.
And it's quite ridiculous. I'm hyped.
So there was a fair bit of travelling there, because obviously bottom of a pillar is never a good piece 2, so I really can't fault seeing a 36 there too much. Like, that would be a little harsh to say, oh, you should have done a lot better here, because bottom of a pillar is just such a bad one.
Universal changes 2 jabs as a buffer.
So, Eggman.
Wait, what universal changes?
Alright, one very minor thing I can mention here is that this is like just an optimization thing, but on Eggman you should wait until you are actually facing up before you fire the first shot, because what happens here is that you're just mashing the button as soon as the fight begins, and this first shot actually misses. So you will actually be slightly faster if you make sure you're facing in this direction before you fire this shot. Because as it is now, it's this second shot that's hitting him, and you can see like it's slightly behind this shot. It's not much, but with this boss, if you can save frames, you may as well do it. So even though it looks like you're going to end up slower because you're starting the inputs later, you will actually be a little faster if you just wait until Tails is facing up before firing the shot.
Wait, what universal changes? Does nobody have like a multi-jab anymore? Because I don't really know what the universal jab changes.
And yeah, just trying to stick with Eggman so that you are keeping your shots in his hitbox rather than trying to lead him is definitely best like that. Like, it's easy to not be firing far enough ahead of him so that your shots just aren't reaching him properly. Okay, so Prison Lane and Tails in general, sure you like know this, but anyways. One thing that you really want to be doing for movement optimization is just making sure that your jumps, if you need to jump, that you're jumping for as little time as possible. So if you need to round corners, just try and use like short hops, which is just something like this. Like, if you can get away with using a short hop like that to round a corner instead of something more like a full jump like that, it will add up quite a lot over time. So this is something that I'm going to be looking out for as a general movement habit to see if this is done a lot throughout the run. Nice, that fence hop is definitely not free. If you can get around this corner with only one jump, obviously that's preferable. Typically what you'll see me doing is slowing down a little bit here to wait for the door to open, and then once the door is like half open, I go towards it and I just do the entire 180-degree turn in one jump, if I can help it. So I'm going to see if I can pull it off here. Basic strats. So something like that. Like, if you can just manage that, I personally think that is a little better than jumping repeatedly to get through the door there. Obviously, the sooner you can get that one enemy, the quicker that door will open. And the best case scenario that you can hope for here is that you have the door open before you reach it. And I think I've figured out as well, I'm not going to destroy the enemies here. I've had a problem for a long time with jumping here and losing all of my speed. I think that's caused by turning and jumping against the door. Because more recently I've tried just running more to the right and jumping against the wall like this. It doesn't seem to kill my speed quite as much. Because the problem I have is that the door is opening, but then I jump and I slow down completely here as I'm going through the door. Whereas hopefully I'm going to get a better result here by just going to the right. Well, I had speed, but then I messed up the turning as I actually got through the door. But you can see at like the moment that I passed through the door, I still actually did have quite a lot of speed. And I think that's from continuing to jump towards the right. So, something to be aware of there. I think you'd like slow down a bit there, but getting the box break is the most important thing there, honestly. And a 25 check is very respectable there. I typically get 26s when I'm on good pace, so I really can't. Well, what you're doing too much here. I can see like you're trying to go for the weird wall boost here. This is definitely one of the two main options that you've got for this section. I personally just prefer to wait a little here and wait for the door to open. I'm personally not really very good at the wall boost method here, but if you find that it generally works for you, then it is faster to use. So I'm definitely not going to advise you to stop doing that. Just make sure you're practicing at it and that you can get it pretty consistently. Yeah, another example of giving a very slight optimization to the elevator entry. So the elevator doesn't start moving until you are standing on top of it. So this is, I'm going to have to slow this down here actually. Because Twitch, thankfully, does let you slow down VODs. So ideally, at this point, you want to be standing on the elevator. As it is here, you've got extra frames where you're waiting for Tails to land on the elevator. And the elevator doesn't trigger until you've actually landed on it. So I'm just going to play up to that same spot. Nice box. .102 check, that's awesome. I'm going really fast. So this is what I mean by I just prefer to stop there and then go forward speed. But you can see there, I try to do a short hop and I try to land on the elevator as soon as possible. It's possible if you have like a properly timed jump and a very short hop that you can get one of those jumps where the act of Tails passing over the corner grounds him immediately, and that's like the fastest you can get. But yeah, it's just something to bear in mind, that the sooner you activate the elevator, the sooner this auto-scroller is going to start moving. Oh, VOD's still slow down. There we go.
Piranha Plant looks fun. I'm not lying. Piranha Plant looks really fun.
This prison lane so far is honestly really good, though.
Just to tilt people.
I like it. Like, I'd be happy with this prison lane. This is going to be like a 51 check.
Probably be like
Yeah. A small mistake there and it was still a 51 check. This is very healthy.
Just fuck him, dude. I'm gonna be so
Yeah, I like this. Getting the boxes out of the way.
The one thing that's gonna tilt me the most.
You don't need to jump there, just so you're aware.
Like, I'm just gonna get
Something I've started playing with in this section, and I'm completely unconvinced which is faster, but it's just something I've started doing, is that at this point, once you've destroyed these two enemies, I actually like wait on this platform for the door to start opening, and then I just get a running start so that I'm already at full speed by the time I do the jump. But I don't really know whether it's faster. This is what I'm talking about, just for comparison. Got a little bit of time before I get to that section. So you can see, you can just get over without a jump there. But then what I'm typically doing in runs now is like waiting here and then just going like this. And I really don't know if it's faster, but yeah, I like doing that. But I'm expecting to possibly be able to talk about something here. Let's see what happens here.
Like, I'm just gonna get hit by Mario F Smash at like 80 and I'm like, well, there it goes.
Alright, so if you're the type of person who plays with the assumption that those boxes are going to be there because you did a short hop onto the boxes that you were very clearly ready for, that is okay. That's perfectly playable, but you need to be aware of whether the boxes are there. Because, as you'll have no doubt seen in a lot of people's runs, you're going to end up in situations where the boxes just aren't here. And that typically happens from when you're over here shooting these enemies and you're just firing these shots over here. So when you're here shooting these enemies, what you need to be doing is listening to the game audio, because the shot missed. Yes. You can hear the box breaking sound there, and you need to be aware of whether the boxes are there or not, because if you get up to this point, you can see you can't see ahead of you, you just have to be anticipating what you need to do. So if you're going to play this section like the boxes are still there, you're going to do a short hop, and first of all, you're going to lose time from just not making this jump. But second of all, it's actually possible to jump straight through this gap and die. If you get like the right or perhaps the wrong collision, you can just go straight through this gap. So, you also have players who actually try to break the boxes and they expect to reach this point and do one full jump. So like either one can work, you just need to be prepared for which situation you're in. And like I say, the way to do that is to be listening to whether the boxes break as you're destroying those enemies. As long as you know whether the boxes are there or not, you know whether you need to do a short hop onto the boxes or wait a little longer and then do a full hop here, because like I say, that can potentially prevent a death from happening.
Life, goodbye. And I'm gonna scream Falcon, oh my god, I'm gonna be fucking pissed because any Captain Falcon player is literally just gonna scream at the top.
Okay, there's definitely some stuff here. Let's break this down section by section. So you can go, I think you can go slightly earlier than what you did here. Typically, as soon as I see this enemy here, like at this point, I'm already going. Whereas you wait a little bit longer, you can see the shot is already coming towards you, so the shot's going to end up like just going in this direction. Typically, this shot is aiming up here for me because I'm already on top of the platform here. And then as soon as you land, you can just do another short hop to make sure this shot avoids you. I'm going to see if I can demonstrate that like this. Oh no, I can't because, you know, I've already been here and triggered the enemies. So I'm going to take a quick death and get back up here. Please, movement. Yeah, like, that little S-bend is one of the spots where I don't mind people jumping around to slow down a bit, or at least get around in clean fashion. So, there's the enemy, go, jump. And at the same time, when you do that jump, you can also do your mid-air turning, so that you then have the angle to just be going along this section with running speed, all in one jump. Like, there's no need to jump more than once. So the next part here was...
Oh, actually, I lied. The better...
Yeah, so you got stopped a little bit there, so this is just another section where you can definitely afford to slow down a little bit, just to make sure that you get through here without losing any speed. And then once you land here, I just like to do another short hop, aim to the right. And this typically, if you're in this sort of position that you are now, gives you a good position to hit the early enemy. I'm not entirely sure why you missed it, but this is a very finicky early lock-on at the best of times. But it looked pretty good to me. Like, that's about how I would play that, and you just didn't get the lock-on here for whatever reason. So, you're not using like full jumps here, which is pretty good, but the one thing I would adjust here is that at this point, you should already be like aiming aggressively up left, like by the time you even get on this platform. So, as a comparison point... Like there, I got the lock on that. So the game just decided to like deny me the lock-ons there, but then as I went back and I was already on here, you can see I got the lock-ons around here, so you can get the lock-ons as early as like here if you're aiming in the right direction. And then you just be ready to go through this door, hopefully very quickly. That was a nice pivot turn though. So, a little minor optimization you can do here. If we look at this back, the way that you got the roof enemy, you definitely jump in the right place. Like, this second shadow on the floor here, this is where you are meant to jump to get that enemy, but you don't need to do a full jump to get it, so you can get away with a little less airtime. So, like, you've got the enemy here, but if I demonstrate it here, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm just going to do a short hop in the same place, and I should still get the enemy. See that? So that's just going to give you a little less airtime, which is going to translate to a little more speed on the ground. The gate hop is very good though. Didn't really look like you lost much time at all on the gate hop, which is nice. A 136, yeah, is a very healthy time. I'd be happy going with a 136 in a run. And I'm fucking 4th place! Alright, Mental Harbor.
The person being jabbed stays on the ground.
Yeah, so if you don't want to go with the underloop, I'm certainly not going to berate you for that. You know, I don't really go for it either, and you can still get perfectly respectable times without it. So there's, you know, improvement that can be done here, but for the strats being used, a 20.5 there, for the route that you're using, a 20.5 is like a perfectly respectable time. That's about what I would call like a decent time for me. Like, if I'm using that same route, I really like to see like a 20.3, 20.4. So a 20.5 is definitely not unhealthy there.
That's really weird, actually. They don't even...
You can just be, number one, not holding that ball form there, and number two, just watching your spin dash charge durations. It looks to me like you're charging the spin dash longer than necessary here, especially considering you already have the speed boost from the speed pads. Like, you're already almost as fast as you're going to be going, and the spin dash chaining is just to maintain the speed. It's not really to build more speed, so you don't need to be charging the spin dash very long here. Like, you're visibly holding the spin dash for a little bit of time there. So, I just play up to and get another comparison point going. When I get up to that section, just again, like with the same route and strats, I like to just be holding the spin dash for as little time as possible. Look at that, that was interesting. I'll even emulate getting the upgrade for you. So I'm just going to try and spin dash for as little as possible. You can see that, like, this is a good section of the game in general to practice your spin dash chaining. Like, once you're up to good speed like this, you want to just try having as few frames as possible between your spin dashes. The problem is that if you go a little too fast, then you're obviously going to start somersaulting like that. But especially when you're being aided by the speed pads, like in sections like these, the best you can do is just to... Nice. The best you can do is just try to make your spin dash chains as quick as possible. Like, leave as little space between the spin dash chains as you can. Yeah. You know what I'm saying anyways. I'm going to have to play through Metal Harbor again to demonstrate other parts anyway. And the other thing that I mentioned here about not holding the ball form, the reason for this is that, generally speaking, the game follows pretty accurate ball physics. Like, the ball form in this game behaves the way you'd expect a ball to behave in real life, which is to say, if you roll a ball along flat ground, it's going to slow down. And if you roll it up a slope, it's going to slow down even more and then start coming back down the slope. But if you roll it down a slope, it's going to start just accelerating and keep getting faster. And it's kind of the same there. So the best you can do on a flat surface is to just unroll from the ball form as soon as possible. Like, you don't have to necessarily start charging another spin dash, like when you were going for the light trail there. But you do just want to unroll from the spin dash, and that's going to be relevant in spots later in the run as well, I've got no doubt.
Or they just don't get, like...
Okay, this was nice. No under loop, that's fine. Like, no pulley skip, I should say. Doing the rotation there is definitely a way that you can handle that. I personally, I'm just going to see how you got onto this surface here. Yeah, this was good, actually. I don't think you needed to actually use the rotation here. With the way you landed, as long as you're just holding B, this should automatically set you up for a good position to just do the next spin dash from, and get a nice setup for a loop speed skip here as well. I'm just going to catch up with the stage. Can't recover that situation. So you'll have to watch a bit of my gameplay currently. So here, you can see that I get that in time, and then I'm able to just do a loop speed skip there. So there's no need for me to do the rotation there, as long as I know that I'm going to be in the right spot and I'm holding B preemptively. That's kind of the point. As soon as I do the homing attack cancel off the pulley, I'm already just holding B, and it naturally gives me it in time here. And so you want to be in a situation, ideally as well, where you're not homing attacking before the loop like that. As long as you hold the jump a little longer, or alternatively have a lot of speed going towards the other side of the loop, you can quite easily get to the other side. without any risk of actually falling in the water from not making the distance. And then in order to get the loop speed boost, you specifically want to be homing attacking instead of homing attack cancelling. And there is definitely safer than riskier spots to do it from. I'm going to see if I can just force a miss there first of all. Nice backwards loop speed trigger. Yeah, the camera here is not very helpful. I'm trying to die there basically, but the spot is finicky. Traitor is going to insist that you should like do a tap and aim for the bottom of the loop and do it like that. But there's definitely nothing wrong with, if that intimidates you, holding the jump a bit longer, like this, breaking through more of the top half like that, and you'll still get quite a considerable loop speed boost. Like, either one can work. The important thing is just that you need to make sure that you are like through the loop before you do the homing attack. Otherwise, it has a good chance of, if you're in the wrong spot, just launching you through the bottom and launching you straight into the water. Yeah, as I mentioned, Emerldd, rather than homing attacking towards the loop, I would wait until you are through the loop, and then homing attack once you're on the other side. Like, the loop speed trigger will still be there, and it removes the risk that you're going to do it wrong and get launched through the bottom. Because even if it tries to launch you through the bottom, as long as you're through the loop, then you're on the solid side of it, so it can't send you back through, if that makes sense.
Oh wait, that's actually so good. Thank God.
Okay, just making sure that you don't get the left speed pad there is the most important thing.
I know why they did that. So that jab.
Alright, so this is something that I say very commonly. That, and to be fair, I saw you die to this like yesterday on stream, I'm pretty sure. Homing attacking the beetles here is not what you want to do. You should just not homing attack these beetles at all. I'm gonna get my own feed up here. The thing that you need to remember about this section is this is kind of similar to the prison lane elevator that I mentioned, that your pace here is not determined by how fast Sonic is going. It's determined by a different event. With the prison lane elevator, it's about triggering the elevator quickly. With this section, it's about waiting for the rocket platform to be ready. So you can hear that the rocket platform is triggered. At this point, this rocket platform is already... it's getting ready. So I can't progress from this point until this rocket platform is ready. And we'll just start from a clean start. But bear that in mind, like, once you hear the rocket platform sound where it's readying up, I can't progress until the rocket platform is ready to go. So now. And you can see I'm waiting for it to be ready there. I should have just like gotten the checkpoint, but either way. So the point is there, the like I say, I can't progress until the rocket platform is ready. So, in other words, I was already locked in for the timing by the time I was halfway across with the jump like this. And so there's a couple of things that work here. Number one, you can safely make the distance here just by jumping across in one, as I did. So there's no need to attack the beetles to make it across. But the other relevant point is that if you're in the wrong position when you attack the beetles, then you... well, again, I saw this like happen on your stream just like yesterday. You can end up going in the wrong direction and almost forcing yourself into a situation where you're going to die. Something like this. Yeah, I got kind of lucky there, but it's very easy for Sonic to just decide that he wants to target the enemies behind him. But the real point here that I want to drive home is that since it's not going to make you go any faster to attack the beetles and it only introduces risk, what you should be doing here, if you can help it, is just to get a full spin dash charge here and just jump the gap normally. Like, there's no need to attack the beetles and it doesn't help you go any faster.
That means shit like you can't, I know why they did that. So that jab, like the first hit of jab, you know, Fox can like...
51 check is still pretty respectable though.
And then you just get up smash.
So I would advise here using a bit less than a full spin dash charge. I think you got a full spin dash charge here when you were on the side railing after the rocket dropped you off. Like right here. I'm going to look at this again. That looked pretty close to a full spin dash charge to me. But the problem here is that you're going to land like around here and you had to pretty much come to a full stop and semi-set yourself up on here So it's adding like a few bits and pieces that need to go right. When if you can get away with using a bit less of a spin dash charge, you'll be able to land like around here, and you'll be able to just run forward whilst holding B to ready another spin dash, and just get it naturally when you're at this point, and just jump straight towards the handle. That's what typically gets you the like 13-second times. And like it looks really difficult to get them, but fundamentally it's still fairly simple movement. It's just the fluidity and making sure that you're not going too fast here, if anything. That's what I need to stress. The earlier you can land here, the better it's actually going to set you up for the next spin dash jump, because you'll just naturally get all of the delay timing while you're holding B, while you're running forward here, and hopefully it'll come out when you're already just when you've ran onto here. I'll see if I can get it right myself here. Something like that. And I missed the rocket handle, but homing attack still got it. But you can see what I was talking about there, that I landed a little earlier, and the spin dash just came out as soon as I was on that slanted surface. And from there you can pretty much hold an upright angle. The way I'm doing it, it seems to be like a lot of right with a little bit of up, and that seems to just take you straight towards the rocket handle as long as you have a lot of speed from the spin dash jump. And at the same time here, I think you were actually on the floor vertex. I'm going to slow this part down actually to have a proper look at it. Yeah, you started on the floor vertex, so it's a minor thing, but similar to what I was saying at the start of City Escape about how you want to spin dash on the staircase rather than before it, because crossing the vertex starts making you decelerate quite a lot. The same thing happens here. So when I see a lot of people do this skip by starting on the floor and then just letting the spin dash go onto this slope surface and then jumping, it can work, but it's more difficult than it needs to be, because just the act of crossing that vertex actually does give you a little less speed, and it just, again, it makes it a little more difficult than it needs to be. So, although, if you really struggle with getting on this surface, like I say, starting from the floor can work, just be aware that the very act of doing that is making this large jump itself a little more difficult than it needs to be. I agree with the slowdown speech. Nice start spam.
Really cool, actually.
Okay. So holding left at the start here, or like tapping left, can get you a bit of a faster start here. So there's a couple of ways that you can like do this last skip as well. Like a 125 with the route that you had suggests that this was still overall pretty good. This last loop skip in general is kind of just whatever works for you, because this method that you used here isn't my preferred way of doing it, but then my preferred way of doing it has its own host of problems that tend to happen. But we'll take one more look at this. So you ran through both set of speed pads and you waited until you were like past this point before jumping, and then you homing attack towards the goal ring. That can work. The only issue that I sometimes have with this is that if the timing is a little off, the camera has a tendency to get stuck on the inside of the loop. So I'll just get my own comparison point up here. So what I tend to do instead is to hit the first set of speed pads, jump over the second set, and then jump upright, and just try and take a very direct path to the goal ring. Like I say, it has its own things that can go wrong, but this is what I tend to try and aim for. I try and hit the middle speed pad here as well, as I'm sure it's faster than the other two. I think it is. So that's what I try to do there. And I didn't really mean to finish the stage there, but hey, I can ready Green Forest as well. So that's fine. Two games going at the same time.
Hey, what's up, Marts? Do this to instantly improve your day.
I've got things under control, don't worry. Alright. Go back to the game.
That's in the game.
Okay, so Shadow.
And I have to play a captain.
I'm not really going to be able to do any demonstration here because, well, I kind of can.
But... me not playing against any Captain Falcon bracket.
So, the direction that you're generally using here looks like a little suspicious to me. going to the right here, the problem that you have here is that you need to find some way to angle back towards Shadow and be able to actually run in with a lot of speed. What I try to do myself is use like counter-clockwise circles like this. And it's generally easier to get going back towards him with a bit more speed. But something that I have mentioned, no matter which direction that you're going, is that after you've dealt damage to him, what you should ideally be doing is doing a short hop and then homing attack cancelling away from him. Because the thing about Shadow is that he's going to like try and act... when you attack him, he's going to try and counterattack. But he can't counterattack while he's recoiling from your damage. So, in other words... Let's just wait for this first hit to land. So, in other words, between this point and that point, when he's in midair in the recoiling animation, he can't use a counterattack of his own. So what you can do is, as soon as you've dealt damage, just do a short hop and a homing attack cancel away from him, so that you can be moving away from him at high speed. That means that you can then turn around and start moving towards him at a high speed, and that can help you get the efficient hits 2 and 3. But the important thing is that you do any actions like that while he's in his recoil animation. And if you do that, then he won't use a counterattack. Because if you do it, like, now, at this point while he's running around, then he's just going to react to any of your attacking attempts, like jumping, somersaulting, homing attacking, by doing a jump of his own and attacking towards you. Like, you can be on the opposite side of the arena and do a somersault facing away from him, and it will force a jump and a homing attack from him. Like, that will consistently happen. It's just part of his AI. He reacts to an attacking attempt. Nice video. By attacking himself.
Alright, it's really blurry, so it's hard to see. We fit trainers at 93. Captain Falcon is at 0. Alright. Let's just look at this clip.
Alright, we're doing Smash analysis now.
That's almost a full fucking shield, boys.
I should have rejected this PB for having non-game related footage inside the...
Why?
Ugh!
Why does Falcon Punch kill at 93 in the middle of the stage?
This shouldn't be in a very serious PB VOD.
It has to be fucking not in the game.
Alright, yeah, I've got to... I've got to very quickly finagle something here. Don't worry about it, it's fine. I've got it all worked out what I'm going to do here. See this? Hello? I don't think that's meant to work. Oh. There we go. Okay, got him. We'll just deal with this throughout Green Forest. There's no sidebar, but don't really need it.
I'm not playing a game with that bullshit in there. That's actually so ridiculous how much...
I would prefer chaining another Spin Dash there, but if whatever you find helps prevent from like flying off on the floors in this stage is the most important thing. That was a really fast vine there, but then it did result in not being able to get the Spin Dash storage here. It's just a minor detail though.
Like, that is probably the most...
So I would definitely recommend getting the Spin Dash storage here though, for sure. And what I mean by that is that if I just run this back, you hold this Spin Dash into the spring. Like, this Spin Dash just rolls into the spring. What you should be doing is cancelling the Spin Dash here and starting to charge the next one, because any time that is spent holding B at this point before the next Spin Dash comes out, if you just like continue to hold B until you land again, it will reduce that Spin Dash charge time from the next Spin Dash charge. So, I'll just compare here. So, as I was running up towards the vine there, it means that getting to the vine and the vine animation itself is slightly slower, but this is the first Spin Dash storage that I've got here. So you're going to notice as soon as I land here, I'm going to get an immediate Spin Dash. Like that. And similar here, I'm going to start holding the B button after this next unpause. This should be the correct timing. I was a little late. You can see the spin dash happened like just before I got on there. Please don't die. Ah, wrong position. Try this again. The checkpoint was just before. I'm gonna do it like without a pause buffer, and you're gonna be able to see what I mean after I get off the next vine here. So I'm gonna get the spin dash charge immediately as soon as I land here. And that is because I was holding the B button before I ran into the spring, and the game basically remembers how long you've been holding the B button. Like I say, it's hard to describe, but it basically stores the duration of the button press, which takes into account how long you need to be holding it before the spin dash actually comes out. So that's a nice little tool to have in your arsenal.
Probably the most bullshit.
You can like chop at least a second off this stage by getting a couple of good spin dash storages.
They better have fucking spirits on or some shit. That better not be final game.
Okay, I definitely don't mind that loop skip.
That I'm seeing. That's all
And if you don't want to go for the light dash wall run here, I also don't do it, so that's totally fine. This looks like you didn't really get a neutral light dash here. I'm just going to watch this again.
better not be final game Falcon knee that I'm seeing. That's all I gotta say.
Okay, you did actually. It was just the control stick angle coming out of it, which was a little iffy, and it is causing you to be in an awkward position here, so I would just try to, if you're going to get that light dash, try and find an angle where you're going to come out of it as straight as possible, because the best case scenario you can end up in here is that you're going to go over this vertex neutral, and you can just get the neutral spin dash here, which is to say, if you're on this central vertex here, you can just do the same thing as the start of the stage, where you just charge a spin dash and let it go without any stick input, and you'll just go as fast as possible as you can down here, and then you're not losing any momentum from getting a lot of vertex changes. Let's see if I can do the same thing here. Please, game. So this is what I mean. So I couldn't get the neutral, but like my path was a little straighter, but ideally, if possible, you want to just be in this spot so that you can... Currently, I'm not using the control stick, and then you can just let the spin dash go like this. Like on any other vertex, it doesn't work properly. Like if I... Again, that's still the neutral vertex, but if I do it from somewhere like this, then you're just not going to have a good time with it, unfortunately.
If it is, I'm picking up Captain Falcon and just kneeing everybody, and everybody's gonna get.
Getting the top spring there is a little faster, so nice.
Falcon punch killing isn't an issue to me. I guess that's not really the main issue. I was adding on to the
Checkpoint for safety. Oh, going for Warren. Yeah, okay. Oof. Alright, honestly, I think this is the correct decision to bail out there. It's still possible to get the wall run with the bad camera there, but I really would not recommend trying it. So if you're going to insist on going for wall run, I'm going to see if anything could have been like a little different about that setup, because I'm not so sure about this one.
Really the main issue. I was adding on to the ridiculousness.
So I personally don't like the spot you were at when you're doing the spin dash jump. I didn't think you were going for wall run because the spot that you did the jump from is not particularly friendly for ending up in a good spot. I think that's part of the reason why you ended up in the wrong spot and actually getting the bad camera that you did. I was expecting you at this point to just go to the right and just do the regular loop skip. Typically, I find at least that if you're going to go for the wall run, you want to start like more around here, like halfway up the slope here. But you started like really far back, which kind of surprised me that you were still going for wall run with this. But I think you did make the correct decision with bailing out. Yeah, I don't really blame this. You then got the neutral light dash here. And this is actually really helpful for getting the good light dash up the tree, but then you also jumped and homing attacked the spring here. Yes, you got caught on the collision on the right-hand side, but regardless, that's going to make you end up with that backwards position, which I don't personally recommend trying it from. But what I'm specifically talking about here is, so you got the good light dash here, and this is kind of an almost direct result of getting this light dash here. So there's a couple of different ways that you can get the light dash here. You got what I call the neutral light dash, which is where you just go straight through the trail of rings. It looks very smooth, and Sonic's not wiggling around side by side. When you get that neutral light dash, you can continue to just hold up and just run straight into the spring, and you will have the correct position to get the good light dash on the way up the tree. So you can see he just went straight through it. So here, you don't need to do like a jump and a homing attack into the spring. But, I mean, it still works. You still got the good light dash. But hopefully I'm going to be able to show this, and the game isn't going to punish me by giving me like a 1 in a million bad light dash up the tree, because this should very consistently work with the neutral light dash. I'll get the checkpoint just for repeated demos. So if you can be here, and if you can just get the good light dash here, then all I did there was I continued to hold up, and then I was just pressing B as I was going past the rings at the halfway point up the tree there, and I just get the good light dash. And that should happen every time, as long as you get that first neutral light dash, as I call it. So if you can consistently get that, it's a really nice setup for that good light dash up the tree. Didn't get it there, and you can see that it punished me. Let's give it one more. Actually got the bad one there. Interesting. One more. Speed was pretty low there, so let's try approaching this fast, shall we? Game is really fucking me up with just being able to hit the light dash. Green Forest is really weird with these light dashes sometimes, because of the ring trails like being a bit further up off the floor. Missing it. But the idea is there, and this light dash kind of just behaves the way it wants to behave. Fundamentally though, like, yes, Emerldd, I'm just holding straight up on the control stick after I get the neutral light dash there on the ring trail. But it is what it is.
So unless I die, there's no way I can do Green Force wall run. I'm so hyped, dude. I'm not hyped about that. I mean, again, the Falcon Punch really isn't the issue, because like if you land Falcon Punch like that, then like I guess you deserve the kill.
So one thing if you're going to be doing bungee skip like this, something that you should really be exploiting is that you can use the camera button to force free cam. And what I mean by that is that if I just go up and get the checkpoint and get to the same spot, one of the problems you have with bungee skip is letting the camera just see where you are and what you should be doing. Just get the checkpoint here. So without any camera control, I'm just going to like do the same thing, and the camera gets stuck here. And this is typically what gives people difficulty with learning how to do this, because I know where to go for this, but it's easy to accidentally end up in the wrong spot, especially because the invisible wall on the right is there. So you can't even see if you're rubbing on the invisible wall. However, as soon as the camera gets stuck in that position, what you can just do is tap L to start shifting the camera. You just need to tap it, and that will force free cam mode, and it will actually force the camera to catch straight up with you. So, tap. And it immediately tries to catch up with me. It was in a bad spot there as soon as it caught up with me, but I can do it again. Like, I can show that it will consistently follow you. See how quickly it just snaps to you there? And you can get a very quick view of where you're going. This is going to apply to other stages later in the game as well. Knowing how to manage the camera and force it from auto cam to free cam in certain spots makes certain tricks a lot easier to deal with. Like, you just get a very clear, unobstructed view there.
But you don't deserve it if you
The bad vertex there. Like, yeah, this section just kind of sucks.
full shield.
Yeah, what I can say is I didn't really agree with how you were going back to retry it there. If that starts going wrong, I personally would just bail out and not bother trying the loop skip at all. Like, if you're not set up to do it quickly in one visit, then I don't think it saves time to go back and do at all. You should just carry on as you are here. Because it's just riskier to go back and try and reset it as well, so yeah. Fucking awkward though. I will demonstrate a couple of things about it regardless though. First of all, I need the checkpoint. Alright, so I didn't really get to see how you do this, so I don't know if you still perform it like this, but I know that one thing I've seen you do before is you do a spin dash jump to perform the skip, which objectively is a little bit worse than just letting the spin dash go. So in other words, you tend to do a spin dash jump like this, and this can work, like you can get the distance, but it's more difficult than it needs to be. And the reason for this is that while you are jumping, pretty much while you're holding the A button and rising, the game applies air resistance to Sonic, so it's actually going to make it harder to cover distance. Whereas what you can do is you can just charge the spin dash and let it go, and what Sonic will be in ball form instead. Like, you'll notice that when you jump, Sonic is jumping like this. Like, Sonic is in the jumping form. Whereas if you just let a spin dash go, then he remains in the ball form, like this. So if you just let the spin dash go with the right direction, then you cover a lot of distance. Like, I haven't jumped at all, so I haven't gained any additional height, yet I'm still getting a lot of distance, and that's because Sonic doesn't have the same air drag. And then, ideally, you're in a good position to be able to homing attack and get loop speed there. So, it seems counterintuitive to not jump, but it actually does create better results if you don't spin dash jump here and just let the spin dash roll. And then with a good angle, you can try and get a loop speed that doesn't launch you through the bomb. This is the same thing I was mentioning before, that angle's too high. This is difficult to pull off without already having full momentum from approaching it normally. Okay, this is a good angle. I'm going to wait till I'm through the loop a bit, and then homing attack, and there's no real danger there.
Oh, no overlay? Oh, yikes.
Ah, yes, he does the spin dash, yes! Good strat. There are... Okay, now I get to... Shit. There we go. Okay, back to normal. Yeah, barely anyone else uses the spin dash on the final platform like that, and it is a little faster. So I like that you do that. I'm actually going to edit this scene very quickly, and by that I mean take like 1 pixel off the top to remove that little green border. Now it looks all nice and pretty. But yeah, not bad. Pretty good so far. Alright, so let's have a look at Pumpkin Hill. Again, I'm expecting to have the most in general to talk about with your Knuckles play. Good hint grab, but okay, very lucky free piece, because I mean, obviously you're going to the wrong spot for piece 1. So piece knowledge is still something to definitely prioritize. 3 Skull Brothers, you should just automatically be recognizing this as it's at Pumpkin Mountain. So at the same time, I think Tommy can back me up here on this. I think you can technically check for cold iron bars here. Like, while this balloon is at its highest point, if you have cold iron bars, I think you can see the very edge of the piece. So if you're not already doing this free piece check, there's no reason to not be doing it. And especially because you had 3 Skull Brothers, that's one of the pieces that you can get cold iron bars with. So had you been going towards the first set, it is actually possible to get this. And in this situation, you had a piece 1 that could have possibly spawned cold iron bars. So definitely be aware of that.
I heard you literally cannot X spikes on stage.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to spot, but it is there.
Like, I don't...
But, yeah, not bad.
Get fucking owned.
I would recommend... Oh, you already... Sorry, yeah, you already have your hint. I'm just in autopilot, assuming that going for Twin Skulls was regular. But I was going to say, oh, you should be going for the hint on the mountain there, but you already have your hint for 3 Skull Brothers.
He's just going to land, and then he's going to hit the dare button. And then you're just going to get hit, and then you're going to be like, this is dumb. Because then you're going to get...
Yeah, avoiding grabbing the wall there is not too easy, honestly. I would avoid doing rapid glide resets like this if you don't need to, because this doesn't make you go any faster. It actually slows you down a little bit every time you're doing it. The only time you should be doing glide resets is if you need to conserve the height, and since you're trying to go down here for Bearded Mountain, you really don't need the spare height. So I would try and get out of the habit of just doing glide resets like this when you don't need the height. It's just something that you don't need to be doing. Yeah, digging on that vertex is slightly faster than going over. So, the free piece definitely salvaged that, and I mean, a 39, I'd still take a 39 in a run, so I guess there's that. So that was, a good stage still, I guess. Okay, mission street.
Mikey and Brennan in Summer 7. I'm gonna cry. I'm not entering the 7. Hello?
So the movement looks like a little weird here in that you can be committing to full angles a little sooner, and you're like wavering between a lot of angles quite frequently, but it's not a huge thing. Like, yeah, you still get 22.6. This is like improvable, but it's not a huge thing. You can definitely be squeezing this period of IGT abuse quite a lot more though. I don't know if anyone's like given you a numerical value for this before, but with the IGT abuse, what you can pretty safely aim for is to simulate that you're waiting for the in-game timer to reach 27 before you progress. So let's like have a look at exactly how long you keep this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you ended that about a second early. So you could have gotten like another second of leeway out of that, and what I'm expecting this to show is that if you get the weight hop here and get up to the next drum cycles up here, you're probably going to be waiting another full second before reaching the end of the cycle.
Terrible. And just smash attack everybody, and they're gonna lose.
Yeah, you are clearly waiting a little bit of time there, and this, in its own way, it kind of made it a bit riskier, because had you missed the first hover jump onto this one down here, then it would have actually really introduced some extra risk. I'm gonna like try to show like a counterpoint example here, because using the pause hovers as you did there, I personally don't think it's necessary at all unless you are trying to like hyper optimize this and squeeze every spare tenth out of it. I should actually maybe consider using the upgrade remover for this. So this should be correct. I do need to get the jump though. Whilst I'm here, I may as well just use the upgrade remover, so that I'm actually putting myself in the situation where, you know, I'm going to need to pick up the upgrade. Okay, so I've removed Tails' booster. Because I'm going to be able to hopefully provide a bit of a visual cue to work with as well, assuming your movement is the same every time. Or close enough to the same. Like, you got like a 22.6, I'm probably going to end up with like a 22.3, 22.4. Yeah. So I'm going to wait until it faces like the front of Tails. Until Tails like looks like he's facing directly forward with that sort of timing, you can go. And from here, I'm not going to need to use any pause hovers, I can just go when it's safe. And I'm going to still make this relatively comfortably. This isn't going to be close. Like, I got up there without a jump. Like, well, without a hover. So I waited a fair bit longer, like I say, about a full second longer than you did there, and I still made it fairly comfortably without any pause hovers. So if you want to like squeeze a little bit more time out of Mission Street, this is definitely a relatively safe place to do it. It's back to the VOD. As far as the visual cue goes, you'll obviously have to like play around with the timing depending on what your timing is. I just know that with the sort of timing that we both had there, it's generally quite safe to just wait for Tails to line up, like I say, for the camera to rotate so it looks like Tails is facing ahead, and then you can just go from there, and it provides you with a pretty good timing for that. As for the skip that you did here, considering once you're at this point, past the first checkpoint, obviously your objective is to meet the cycle. Like, what the movement that you do throughout the rest of the stage isn't tremendously important as long as it's good enough to meet the cycle. And I personally don't really like jumping over here and hover jumping again. I mean, like, it works if it works, but I personally prefer to just face tank the police car and go straight through it, because just running through the police car honestly Doesn't really slow you down at all. I'm just going to run into it without shooting it, and you're going to see that it really barely slows you down, if at all. Like this. If there was like a speed loss there, I can't really see how much of a speed loss it was. But obviously, it's better to not get the speed loss at all, and so I try to just shoot the police car out the way. Like that. Not sure if I got it or not, but it's not terribly important, and then from there, you can, you know, still get a regular cage skip. So we'll just do this one more time. This is just an option to consider. Like I say, if what you're doing works for you, then you can by all means keep on with it. But I just like to not use extra jumps if I don't have to. I think this is actually a little faster, since if you're reducing the number of jumps that Tails is using, obviously it's more ground time. And the more ground time you have, generally speaking, the faster you're going. So I think this can potentially be like a little faster than using an extra jump to get over the cages here. The cage skip itself was good though. You didn't rub up against the cages and have your speed cut. That is a surprisingly large source of time loss for people who don't really understand why they're missing Zero Cycle. You don't really need to jump to get this enemy though, I will say. If it helps you to get the enemy, then I guess it's fine, but considering when you're jumping and firing the Vulcan cannon, it can massively influence the direction of the shot, then I don't really think this is a very consistent way to get the enemy in the first place. So I would just continue running here, fire a couple of shots, and hopefully, as long as your timing or angle isn't completely off, it should still get the enemy as it's dropping down. So, again, I can remove this extra green forest scene now as well. So I just fire a couple of shots there, and that guy goes down fairly simply. Nice position. If you can not drag on the shrine at all to obviously lose speed, then that's the best you can manage. But this was a pretty good position for getting the boost underneath the bridge. Like, there's a lot of different ways that you can collide with the speed pad, which influences both how you get over the fence here and if you make it over the fence at all. But generally speaking, landing on here and sliding more to the left so that you run onto it like around here rather than at the edge of it here tends to work a lot better. So you definitely approached it the right way here, because you sail straight over it with like full speed. That's pretty much the best you can get there. If you can like do a hop here to break the box as you're approaching it, that is obviously the best that you can manage. It's a little tricky to manage, but I would like recommend just going for it if you can, because this isn't too slow what you did here, and I think you are still on pace to get Zero Cycle, but we'll see what happens, because it kind of depends how you take this last jump as well. Okay, this isn't bad. Yeah, you'll make this. Okay, it's, yeah, a little bit of a panic to make it on the end of the cycle, but most of the parts definitely are here. There's a couple of small improvements you can make here to maybe increase your consistency. So, as I mentioned, the best case is to break the box as you're going towards it. But if you can't do that, what you can alternatively do is just approach the weight as normal. And then as soon as you trigger the weight and like pivot turn back towards, you know, going backwards so the weight doesn't drop on you, you then just jump and immediately face to the right and shoot. And you should be lined up correctly to just get the box just by shooting directly to the right. I'll see if I can do it here. Well, the weight caught me, but you can see that at this point I'm lined up correctly to get the weight there. So let's try and just get it all in one attempt. And then getting off the weight itself is, the way you did it was better than I see most players do it. It can maybe be squeezed like a little more though. Wow. Wow! So like that. So now the best you can do here, I'm a firm believer that the best you can do on the weight here is to wait on the back end here. Like, I see a lot of players go up to the front of the weight or wait in the middle. Going up to the front is the worst you can do. You like weighted around like the middle towards the back, which is pretty good, but the further back you can start, the better it's going to be, because it's going to get you more speed on the jump. And what you're waiting for is when the camera just starts to move a little bit. like you can see the camera is starting to move here. So when I next unpause, I'm just going to be holding left, and I can just do a hover jump as soon as I reach the edge of the weight. And the timing and the height should both line up so that I'm going to be able to have a lot of speed and enough height to make it over to the next part of the stage. Just like that. You can see that looks really smooth. It looks dangerous, but if you just commit to that and if you follow that strictly, it honestly works very well, and it is about the best exit you can get off the weight elevator. And it can give you just a little bit more time to play with to get, you know, towards the cycle here, because that's ultimately what you're aiming for, getting towards the cycle here. And hey, you can even, if your timing's good enough, you can make it over all in one without needing to stop at all. And you're having a good time. So yeah, so you had like a little bit of spare height when you made it there, but it was still, as far as I've seen a lot of runners doing that jump, it was an above average exit off the way elevator. And thankfully you did still have enough time to make the cycle here. This is generally a good spot to jump from. Alright. I am going to have to insist that you not shoot towards that enemy, because a lot of runners are invariably going to have encountered the problem where once you break through here, the jet comes along and drops bombs on you. Like, this just happens fairly easily. This is directly caused by using the B button once you're in that area, and you actually don't need to attack that bomb enemy at all. As long as you just run in a straight line and maintain speed, that bomb enemy actually won't attack you. Or it'll try to attack you, like you can see it's readying the attack, but its fragments aren't going to catch up with me here. Like, it catches up with me by there, but if you go far enough, the fragments will actually despawn. So I'm going to do it again, and I'm just going to not stop running. So again, I'm not going to fire any shots until I'm past where the jet would be. So you can see I'm just home free and nothing's coming towards me. So since you don't need to use any shots to go any faster there, or be any safer, it's safer to just not use any shots, because then the jet won't come along, you won't get hit by any errant bombs, and it's just generally a safer time. So I would really recommend not shooting in that area. Like, I can perfectly understand why people do it, because they think they need to get rid of the bomb robot, but it's the fact that you don't need to get rid of the bomb robot. As long as you just keep going, it won't hit you. Doing the jump here is like slightly suboptimal, but to be honest, I do it as well, because if you get the wrong angled collision, you can just slide straight down that slope and possibly even die. So I'm perfectly happy to take the couple of tenths of a second time loss just to make sure I don't die there, personally. But this corridor, I'm expecting to be able to advise you a little here. Yeah, okay, so one. So there's a couple of little adjustments that you can do to have an easier time with this corridor. And this I can offer just a consistent way to deal with this. So I'm going to get rid of the enemies first of all. So first of all, like, I got through there, but it was slightly luck-based on the second one. I'll explain what I mean. So for getting through this first one, you really just want to be hugging the wall as much as you can, and it should provide you with like the right angle. Generally, the biggest cause of not getting through here correctly is that you're not against the wall, and it can cause a lot of problems. Like, you can see I'm getting caught there. Got through fine like that time. But as long as you're like running against the wall, you should get through there without too much problems. The problem here is with this second one, where if you try and do the same thing, you won't get through consistently. So go through. Go through again. I'm getting lucky with these working. Going through again. I'm still just getting lucky here. And there we go. So there's the first bonk. This will happen basically randomly if you just try to hug the wall to get through here. But what you can do to consistently get through cleanly is, once you get through here, if you just run in this sort of direction, so you're like facing a little more to the middle of the road, and then if you start tilting and take this sort of curved path towards the wall, then you'll go through very cleanly. It sounds weird, but it honestly does work. Yeah, just go through clean there. And again. And I'll just do it one more time. Hopefully show that it's not a fluke. Yeah, it works very reliably. It's like very slight stick adjustments, but number one, it's slightly faster. Number two, it looks really refined. Like, it makes you look like you've got really refined movement when you can pull that off consistently. And to be honest, it is quite a subtle movement-based trick to do, because the stick directions you need to use there are very slight adjustments. Throughout that whole tunnel, you're basically just tilting upright. But then to do that small adjustment after the first set of boxes, you need to tilt a little bit further straight up and then start tilting back upright a bit. But it's a very slight adjustment. But it will help you with just like the finer movement mechanics as well, to be able to do that.
Are characters unlocking in appearance order?
Yep, shooting that car out of the way, nice. So you can take this corner inside.
The starting roster is just the 64 roster?
I would take a slightly straighter path to the ring if you can help it, but that was a mostly sound end. So I don't really mind that section. Overall, you know, it's a 0 cycle. It's not a bad mission street at all. Okay, let's see what happens with Aquatic Mine.
I don't know how banning is going to work in Ultimate. Like, they're literally just going to need to settle on, like...
So, free piece checks, just to have a rundown, making sure everyone knows where these are. So, free piece to check here.
Be a ton of tournament legal stages.
Free piece to check here and here. Free piece to check here. And then free pieces to check here and here. So, for anyone who doesn't know, there's several free pieces that you're checking for in this intro cutscene.
And banning is going to be a bitch.
Ah, there's the bad start! I have not a single person I've analysed so far has done the start of Aquatic Mine correctly in a story mode run. So there's a little thing that you can be aware of here, which is that the start of Aquatic Mine is not the same in story mode as it is in practice. Like, 99% of people's Aquatic Mine plays are going to be through stage select here, and I'm mashing A to begin here. You don't have control of Knuckles until you're actually on the ground, and this also happens when you restart, that I don't immediately have control of Knuckles. Whereas if I go into story mode, thankfully there is a scene to start on Aquatic Mine. And you're going to see that after the intro cutscene, as soon as the stage starts, you have full control of Knuckles. So I'm going to be able to control him and get a fast start when he's in midair, before he's even touched the ground. Like this. It's like it's a slight optimization, but you can probably save in the region of a second just from having a fast start like that. And you can do the piece checks here as you're going up towards this pulley. So that's just a good habit to get into if you can help it. Yeah, make sure you're getting all the stuff you're going for. If you're going to go for this free piece check, I mean, number one, I think Tommy has told me that this isn't really worth checking for if you have a green first ping. Whether that's sound knowledge, I'm not entirely sure. But regardless, if you're going to go for this piece check, you should just do it as soon as you get up here. And then you can turn around and, you know, grab this hint, then go for that. You can do all those things afterwards. So if you're going to go for that free piece check, it's generally better to do it as soon as you get up to the top. Here goes pulley. Nice first piece. Yeah, narrow path makes sense here. Oh, I like these pieces. Oh, yeah. Alright, yeah, narrow path movement is a little finicky. Let's have a look at this. So you can do what you like did here, like trying to punch through the minecart, but it's a little awkward. What I typically end up doing in practice is a nice piece. So just assuming this route again. So I'm going towards container anyway. So So what I typically end up doing in practice is just to jump over this minecart and then punch once I land on the ground. That's the most important part with narrow path movement, that once you need to clear this lip here, if you just run towards it, then Knuckles is gonna oops. So what I see a lot of people doing is like jumping and gliding, and then drill diving as well. So a couple of things can go wrong if you do that. Namely, if you hold the glide too long, you'll latch onto here. Or, I hate the camera in this area. I'm trying to get it to rotate. Or when you glide and then drill dive, then you're just going to end up digging, as kind of happened there. So the best thing you can instead do to manage this is, once you get towards the edge here, just punch to do a punch excel, and Knuckles will go sailing over there. And this helps to get towards the end of narrow path as well, because then once you land here, you can just punch again, and it sends you up this slope with high speed. So you then don't have to deal with what a lot of people have here when you're like rapidly gliding to get up here or going backwards and you don't have any speed. None of that is an issue as long as you just do this way of getting through into the entrance of narrow path, like I say. Like, jump over where this minecart will be, punch and punch if you're going towards here, and it gets you through there really quickly. I actually don't do the broken minecart three-piece check, so I can't demonstrate that specific thing, Tommy. I apologise.
Really hit the corner of that.
I should do, but I just not in the habit. So this is exactly what I'm talking about here. In this situation, the correct play would be to stand at the bottom of the slope, get in a position to just be able to do a punch excel, like just do a short hop and glide, and just punch up the slope here, and you'll go much faster than when you're repeatedly gliding up the slope there. Oof, brutal. Right, they're shaped. I mean, you can start drill diving as soon as you're out of bounds there to just start going down slightly earlier. Yeah, just the things to really bear in mind that I mentioned there. The main thing is the narrow path movement, because that will help for a lot of different piece sets. Alright, Route 101.
Randomly deciding the stage will never be something that's allowed, just because there are certain characters who will benefit from certain stages more than others.
Route 101 is always like kind of scant with what I can actually provide as a demonstration or critique, because, you know, this stage is not really conducive to practicing sections back to back. It's not like I can practice a section of the stage and show you it over and over again. But nothing's too objectionable here. This looks like it's going to be... going for the balloon here, I don't necessarily agree with this routing choice. I don't know if that's the recommended route, because it's not part of my boost route. I personally don't go for that balloon, but if it's going to end up with a good set of boost timing, then I guess it's fine, because without the intro boost, getting a 38.8 here is about what I would expect to see if I was in this situation, so it doesn't seem to be losing a lot of time. Like, if that costs time, it costs frames.
That's just how it is.
I wouldn't necessarily do that boost there, though. Specifically for the reason that with this car nearly getting in the way, what you can typically aim to do instead is to take a very aggressive inside turn and deliberately faceplant into the car, and then if you still have the boost, you can just boost straight after. And then typically this next ring trail, again, I don't know if this is still going to line up because you got the balloon, but on my ring route, getting this ring trail then gives you the next boost. Okay, you still do, fine. So then you, like I say, you should have been able to go into that blue car, boost straight after it, and then just use the boost straight after, and you'll still have the next boost when you need it. Yeah, like it's hard for me to know here if you're following a specific ring route and if you're executing that route correctly, so I'm just assuming that all the moves you're making here are deliberate. This was definitely just a mistake. This was definitely like the first set of mistakes in the stage, I'd say, the end of this lap. Like, first of all, I'm gonna run it back a little more here. I also don't follow Geek's route, trust me. Can actually show hopefully my Route 101 route after this. So I used that boost earlier so that you don't just fly around this corner. Because the problem you have here is that because of how fast you took this corner, you're not really able to get this ring trail here. And this contributed to missing a boost that you should have gotten a bit later. Like, so, no, you're not getting these rings here. But then you took like a really weird set of turns here and you missed most of these rings. Ideally, I get a boost at this point and use it immediately, and then the balloon here gives me the next boost.
We'll just ban until like.
But as it is, you don't have a boost now, so you use the boost here. And this is going to result in a little bit of compound time loss here, because that means that this ring trail is not going to give you your next boost.
Nah, it'll probably be more than that. It'll probably be like 10.
Yeah, you got every ring and it doesn't give you the next boost, which now means that you can't boost here, which costs about half a second if you can't boost here.
Might be like 20 stages, so that would make sense too. But like 10 counters, picks 10 neutral stages, and then just go back and forth with the banning process. And then like,
This in itself is fine though.
5 bans or some shit. But that's just so ridiculous. That would take forever to ban. Be like, I ban Pokemon.
Okay, at the very least, the yellow taxi was out of the way. That's one of the things that, like, once time loss starts happening in lap 2, you can end up with weird situations where the yellow taxi is in the middle of that ring trail when you're going towards it, and yeah, it can just be bad. So the fact that the yellow taxi was ahead, it does indicate in itself that you're losing time, but it makes this section of the stage at least easy to play. Hitting that car is irrelevant since you're on the slope, so it doesn't really slow you down. Should get the boost here. Yep, okay. That's an important boost to get, so as long as you got that boost, that in itself stops you from losing up to a couple more seconds. And then, yeah. So really, that was still, like, decent up to the end of lap 2, really. Like, it was the way that you took the end of lap 2 that ended up causing pretty much all the problems you had to the end of the stage, honestly. I'm gonna try my own comparison, Route 101. I mean, I only have one attempt with the intro boost, but then again, the one you had just there didn't have the intro boost, so it's still not going to be a direct comparison, but I'm going to try and like show the route that I use for the rings. And honestly, like I say, my ring route isn't Geek's route, so it's probably not optimal, but I can still get perfectly good times with this route. So a bit of a collision there, but it doesn't really matter. So my next boost here. So I'm going to skip this balloon. So this is the first divergence between our two routes. Since I have the intro boost, I'm about 0.8 ahead of where you were. So I use this boost after I hit the blue cart. Get my next boost here. And then I use this next boost here. And if that goes well, you still avoid the blue car, so I should still be at good speed here. So I now have my next boost for once I get up this slope here. Just as soon as I land, I use it. And I can hopefully get some of these rings, and I'll get my next boost here. And then this balloon gives me my next boost. And like I say, if I didn't have it from the balloon, these rings wouldn't give me the next boost. So boost here. Bit hairy on that turn, but it is not of a huge consequence. That was just a bad turn on my part though, that is going to lose a little bit of time. Yeah, for sure. Still getting my boost here though, which is nice. So I can just boost immediately without really waiting for those. And as long as I can still take the inside turn there, that's not bad. And then just make sure you don't hit the car there. You can, if you're on really, really good pace, be ahead of that car when you exit the pit tunnel, but yeah. It's just a thing. Either way though, still like not a really disrespectful Route 101. This is probably going to be a 218, I want to say. Oh, I really need to learn to not underestimate Route 101 so much. That was a 216. Not too bad.
What was my first one again?
Okay, so I've always said that, in my opinion, Hidden Base is one of your stronger stages. So I'm probably not going to be doing too much critique here. Because I do think Hidden Base is one of your best stages in general. You can refine the way that you took that, though, I will say. Like, the first thing to note in Hidden Base is always that you just want to get these dynamite packs as smoothly as you can. Typically speaking, you want to get it so that you don't have to turn around too sharply here, which causes you to lose speed, such as like you can see I lost my speed there. So if you can enter this section at this sort of angle, then that's always a good thing. And if you end up in this sort of location, then you cannot get the third lock on here. So you need to be like on the left-hand side here in order to get that last lock. So typically, you know, if over here, yeah, I can still get it from over here, but once you like get down to this edge, if you're already here and you commit to jumping across and hoping that you're going to get the lock on, you're just not going to get it. So the best case scenario is, if I just start again, to be able to get it smoothly from just one visit. Like that. Learning the movement for that is a little finicky though, since you need to come dangerously close to falling in the sand. Yeah, the lock-ons in this game can be pretty silly. The lock-ons don't necessarily care about whether you have a line of sight from the laser to the target. They actually only really care about where you're trying to target the target from. Like, it's more positional based than line of sight based. It makes little sense, but that's just how it works. Okay, nice recovery there.
What's up, Cinder?
GC skip, boys.
Yeah, it's gonna be absolutely...
I mean, if you want to like super optimize going for GC skip, then you can still prioritize what I've said about getting as much ground time as possible, but taking this route is... You need to be pretty precise to get that, but it's slightly faster than doing the hover jump as you did there. Oh hey, I can GC skip, I'm good at this game. Anyway.
Dude, I can't wait. I'm going to play the shit out of it.
So, you probably could have released from the pulley slightly sooner there, but if you don't want to go too soon and risk just not having the height, so I don't really disagree with that. I think this was another lack of camera control. This is another spot where you ideally want to be using L to force free cam. Once you like reach the halfway point here, the camera sort of automatically turns around. I just tap L here to help it along, because it suddenly snapped around very aggressively and you started like going out in this direction. And I think camera control will just help you here. Like, yeah, so you started like going further to the left than you needed here. I shouldn't have died here. But I was just doing it to be funny, but that's just costing me like 20 seconds to get back to where I was. I'll just do axle jump here because I know I'm going to at least consistently get it without dying. Same thing here as well. If you're going to go for axle jump, once the camera gets stuck there, I'm tapping R to help the camera reset. So, as I'm in progress with this hover jump, I'm just going to be tapping L periodically. And you can see like it started turning and then it hitched a little, turning back the other way, and then it started turning back towards the left. That's from me tapping L, and it just helps it stabilize quite nicely like this. Nice. Oof, yeah, just watch your angle there. I think that was just a direct result of not having enough right on your control stick angle. Just a little more right and this would have been quite good. Yeah. That's just like a fine thing. If you're not at full speed here, you're not going to get the distance for this hover jump, so arguably going for the pause hover at this point isn't really important. You're not going to make this either way if you're not at full speed. But if you're just in the habit of pause buffering, there's nothing wrong with it because, you know, it doesn't cost any IGT and it will give you a better hover jump either way. But I can almost guarantee that it won't be good enough to make this gap if you're not at full speed. Good recovery though. Okay, when you're approaching these doors, and if you get the feeling that they're not going to break fast enough, what you should be doing is jumping towards them rather than slowing down on the floor. I need my game feed up. That's not going to be high enough, I don't think. But when you're jumping against those doors, they do less to kill your momentum when you're airborne for some reason. I'm going to try and demonstrate it on this door in a structured way. So what I'm going to do is run towards this door. Well, since I just got the checkpoint, I can just demonstrate it like this, actually. So I'm against this door, and I'm just going to... Well, you can see I can barely even face towards it. But if I shoot it as I'm against it, like, I have to start from ground speed, from standing speed, pretty much. Whereas if I jump against it, and then if I shoot it in midair just as I'm about to land, I should still have my full speed. Like, you can see there that I was still going pretty fast when I went through the door. So let's start from some distance. Like, I'm still going pretty fast there. It doesn't cut all of my speed. So, if you can tell that the door isn't going to be broken in time, like, jumping against it to get to the last shot is a nice little, like, halfway bailout option. This was generally pretty nice. This is actually fairly close to the timing that I use. I'm not sure if you're going for a specific audio cue here for when to jump, but personally, I go by the ring sounds, and I do a hover jump as soon as I hear the 4th ring sound. You went like slightly earlier than it, so you still got a good jump, but you're going to see here the position that I get when I wait to hear the 4th ring sound, or go on the 4th ring sound. So we end up in like basically the same place. But if you were just doing that by feel, then it's just something to be aware of, that the ring trail there does give you an audio cue to go off. I'll just demonstrate it one more time. That once you start going up, the 4th ring that you collect, just hover jump from there, and you're generally in a good spot. Like that. And it's pretty, you know, pretty smooth. Yeah, if you've got a cue of some sort, then generally, yeah, it works. So if you use a visual cue, that's fine as well. So this door break is actually... I think this is one of the hardest things in the entire stage to get right. And by get right, I mean go through this section without slowing down. Like, it's nice that you go early off the pulley because you get moving sooner, but I think it personally makes it harder to get this good door break. I'm going to, like, try it myself, but full disclosure that I am not, like, entirely consistent at this, so I'm probably going to miss it. I may need to give this a couple of attempts. I kind of got it there, because again, I was mid-air on the last shot, so it didn't cut all of my speed. But this is very difficult to get. Yeah, I'm kind of half getting away with it there, but this is a difficult one to get off. You can probably like see that I'm waiting until I'm at the top of the pulley, and I'm then hover jumping right with like a little bit of down, so I'm creating a little more space between myself and the door, so where you're like taking a very direct path and getting caught by the urn here, I'm more like curving around and approaching it like this. And once you have an angle where, like, say if you're standing here and you're angling towards the door like this, you can hopefully get some Vulcan shots to hit it as you're approaching it, but it's a very precise angle. And you can get the door with just running on the ground, but again, it's even harder. But if you can practice that, then this is like, you could probably chop like a second off just getting this door break before running against it and slowing down like this. If you want to also find a little more time save in Hidden Base, then rather than... I'm going to need to get these enemies out of the way. Rather than taking this route where you jump like this, it is a little faster. It's about a second faster, I think, to just run onto this spring and hover like this. The problem is getting that door break soon enough, because I needed to time when to start my hover and when to start my shots, and I barely did both of them at the correct time. This is a little faster if you can manage it, but this is not trivial to perform. This is actually quite difficult. And, you know, if you miss it, you're going to end up down here, and you'll need to use a pause hover to get up here. So that's something you can consider, but it's not a trivial strat to perform. Nice, I don't go for that pause buffer myself, so that's quite nice. Considering you barely got the door break there before hitting it and slowing down, I normally wouldn't have recommended like doing this jump here like you did, but it clearly slowed you down just enough so that the timing was just right. Like if you'd been any faster here, you actually would have ended up losing more time from just hitting the door and slowing down completely. So overall, that actually ended up being the right play. So you can save a little bit of time on this pulley jump by just going as soon as you see the pulley start to pull you up, for lack of a better term. I'll show you what I mean. So just as soon as you see tails start to get pulled up here, you can just hold down and hover jump, and you should make that gap. Normally, I don't recommend holding down while you're doing this, purely for the reason that if you wait a little, like a lot of people do, and like you did here, and then jump, and please, and then hold down, then the camera turns and you may not necessarily make it to the pulley. But if you just do it as soon as you see tails getting pulled up, then it is early enough that the camera pan doesn't really take effect until you're actually at the pulley. And if I have said in the past to neutral stick it because I was like doing it suboptimally myself, because I was taking it later. Because if you neutral stick it, then I'm just gonna like neutral stick it now at the top of the pulley after the camera pan. Like you do get the distance to make it across, but it's, you know, it's quite slow. It gives you the distance, but like it's not preferred. The main point of using down stick if you go as early as possible is that you're doing it early enough that the camera pan doesn't get in the way of where you're going. So that can get you across a little earlier. Because what I think I saw here as you were doing it is, I'm going to slow the VOD down again here. Like when Tails jumps across to the pulley, from the first pulley to the second pulley, it's going to get snapped down, which is basically showing you the spare height that you had. So where Tails is here, you're going to see that when he contacts the pulley, he like gets snapped down a bit. Like, you see how it just pushes him down there? So in other words, you could have been like this much further lower and still grab the pulley. Which means that you can afford to do it a bit earlier. Again, this is more like a shaving tenths off the stage, but at a high level, this is what hidden base is. It's just shaving as many tenths as you can off the stage, and they all come together to create seconds of time save. Such as if you can get off that next pulley slightly faster as well, then it will be like a little bit faster. And all those things just come together. Okay, nice. You can maybe be a little straighter when you're performing that, but this is generally the correct idea. Like for this first hover jump, for this first one here, it is better to take this sort of slanted path as you did here. It's obviously a bit riskier, but because if you don't make the hover jump, you're going to fall in the sand. And the same thing here. From here, you can like go straight like this and just jump onto the corner. As long as your hover jump is good. And if it's not good enough, you're still hopefully going to be far enough to the right that clipping off the ledge is going to end you here rather than here. But yeah. Because the way that like you angle towards it there, it's like... So if you'd continued on straight like this, if your hover jump wasn't good enough and you didn't make it, then you're obviously going to end up here and you're still alive at least. But the way that you then angle towards here means that if your height isn't enough and you just slip off the corner here, then you're probably just going to fall in the sand. So the main thing here is just to make sure that your hover jump is good enough. Okay, all three lock-ons there is good. So, okay, I'm going to need to make sure I'm setting up the... I think I can set up this situation correctly, because I've currently got the blaster, but we'll see. I think what Traitor is specifically referring to is this jump. You don't need to hop around. Okay, so if I get one lock on here, the blaster I think should still just get the bottom three. I need to see if I've got the three here. Okay, I've got the two, whatever. Point is, the first tier is destroyed, which is fine for this demonstration, because for the rest of the lock-ons, if you've gotten the first 3, so that the first tier is destroyed by the time you're getting over here, which it was in your PB, once you are on this pulley, you can just hold down right and hold the B button, and you should get the lock-ons early. Let's try this again. Fuck me. I hate the blaster. Bad jump. Please get the enemy. Alright, so you can see like how I got the lock-ons as I was rising up there. So you can get those like a little earlier. If you haven't collapsed the first tier, then you won't be able to get them very easily, I've found. But in your position, you definitely could have gotten away with that. And here, this is the same sort of situation as I was talking about slightly earlier in the stage, that as soon as you see the pulley start to pull you up, you can go, and you will have enough height to make it over. Like, you can do that a little earlier. And you will get away with it quite consistently. As long as you don't drop the hover jump. But yeah, not too bad. I mean, you said it was a disgusting hidden base, but you still saved a few seconds on it, so you did something right.
Yeah, of course.
For sure.
But then there's also like stages. Oh my god, there's gonna be.
Alright, Pyramid Cave, the most technical stage in the game. I'm gonna just see if there's any specifically important things for me to cover. Right at the start, one thing that you can consider doing is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at the start of the stage here,
Also like stages. Oh my god, there's gonna be actually so many more.
At this point, I expect that you're just holding upright on the control stick. Like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this looks to me like you're just holding upright when you start Pyramid Cave. Okay, so yeah, if I enter Pyramid Cave myself, then it's going to replicate the same sort of start. Yeah, it looks like about the same to me. What you can instead do, and this is super counterintuitive, but when Sonic like starts falling, I don't have an input cam here, so you're going to have to take my word for this, but you will be able to kind of see that this is happening just by paying attention to how Sonic falls. When Sonic starts falling, you actually want to fall down left, and then do a clockwise rotation to upright. It sounds silly, but it does work, and this is what happens. First of all, I'm going to do another just holding upright, and you're going to see how the start of the stage looks like, and when I hit the speed pads. So again, like, I'm not even getting the spin dash before I reach the speed pads. But if I do down left and then rotate the control stick, see how I hit the speed pads much faster and my spin dash comes out after I've hit the speed pads? So that's a difference just immediately that you can do. Yeah, like, it's weird, but it does work.
Stages that we put on with hazards off.
It's hard for me to describe like how fast the rotation is. I guess it's like kind of fast, but all I can really say is play with it. Like, it's the very start of the stage, so you can basically get an attempt at it every couple of seconds. It's not a hard part to practice.
Or that could be used with hazards off, you know?
Missing those speed pads, I personally don't think is better. And yeah, this is like causing a high 13 checkpoint. Like, getting comparative examples of these hallways is always difficult because the number of vertexes here means you're hardly ever going to replicate someone's hallways all the time. But I personally try not to miss those speed pads. Like, that was an accident with me missing those speed pads there. I'll try with just the upright start, like this. Yeah, and I'm actually getting a 14 checkpoint there. Whereas I'm going to try to do the same start again, but with the down left input to begin with. Falling down tons there. But I'm at least getting away with a low 13 this time. So, like, it definitely does save some time. Give and take, I'm not taking the hallways the exact same way, so I will be, like, gaining and losing time in specific places. That hallway is just difficult to time in general. Fairly straight here, which is nice, though. Something that I tend to say, although it's not going to be like entirely applicable here, because you actually got on the top ledge there very quickly, like you didn't have much airtime. But one thing that I tend to say is that if you're going to do like the chow box bounce here, you may as well like go to the right here. Please. Like, you may as well go to the right so that when you're in this position, you've got a slightly shorter path here. But from how quickly you ended up on these archways, I'm not sure you would have like even had the spare time to get it. Like, you got up here really fast, actually. But if you've got spare time, then you may as well just go to the right to leave yourself with a slightly straighter path there, in my opinion. Okay, so I can see from how you did this that you did not use a spin dash hover here, and that is something that you should be doing on this gap, because you almost didn't have the distance to make that gap. And if you use a spin dash hover, it's completely free. Like, you should actually land on the speed pads with a spin dash hover. Like that. So then I'll repeat it again with no spin dash hover. We've got free cam here now as well, which is bad because it makes that difficult to gauge. So this time I'm going to use no spin dash hover. And yeah, you can actually risk not making it over at all. So the spin dash hover is really paramount there. And if you're not entirely sure whether you're going to have the remaining hover frames necessary to make it, you can just do a short hop while you're preparing. Like, your hover frames are always reset to 60 every time you perform a jump, so, like, I've run out of hover frames here, which means that even if I try to do a spin dash hover now, I still fall really quickly. Like, I didn't have the hover frames there. Oh, look at that fucking tech. Whereas, like, I've run out of hover frames now, so now, to get them back, I simply do a short hop like that, and now if I do it again, this time I have the hover frames. A really easy way to see hover frames in action is to do the pause hover that we've talked about, like when runners say do task run on Green Forest by doing a jump and then they pause and unpause to get the effect of the hover frames. You can see it really pronounced in a situation like this, that I'm going to do a short hop here, and now I'm just going to hold the A button as I unpause, and this is going to look really weird. See how slowly I drop there? You can force situations where Sonic just hangs in the air completely. Like that. Like, that's just a visual representation of what the hover frames actually do when you force them in specific situations. And the simple calculation the game does is every time you jump, it resets the value to 60, and then that value drains for every frame you have the A button held. So, TLDR, if you need to refresh your hover frames, just tap the A button to jump. That was a pretty early bounce, but, I mean, it worked. That was actually pretty nice. It didn't really slow down there going towards the wall. That's better than I see a lot of people doing that. If you want a very risk-free way to do the movement here, I think you are manually angling there. So a risk-free way that you can take this, I just need to get up to that section. Please. So as I get off the rail, I'm not going to be using any directional input. Like, I'll just do absolutely nothing. And Sonic ends up in this sort of spot. May as well get rid of the ghost here. So this can kind of be exploited by having the neutral stick position from just coming off the rail. And then if you hold B after exiting the rail, then Sonic is, well, you got Vertex there because I had so much speed, but... So let's reset this one more time. I hate this section, seriously. So Sonic's just going to do a spin dash charge here. So once this spin dash charge happens, what I typically do, just as a risk-free way of doing this, is to tilt myself to the right. You can see I'm angling towards the wall, and now I'm neutral stick again. Because if I continue to hold upright, once I release the spin dash, then I go towards the wall, and because you're holding the stick angle, you slow down a lot when you hit that wall. Whereas if you do it neutral stick, then Sonic will hit the wall and you'll just travel parallel to it without really losing any speed. So that's just a risk-free way that I manage that. Nice door skip though, that was very quick. This hallway, like, almost everyone can save a lot of time here, but so can I. I'm terrible at taking this hallway, so... It's not looking awful though. Like, you can definitely be going faster there, but it's a difficult section to take. That was a very nice super bounce up there, though. That was almost as fast as you can take that. Not bad, not bad. I'm not sure if you just did this as quickly as you can manage this super bounce around here. Like, this looks like you were just doing that as quick as you can manage, and this can cause some problems. One thing as well I should mention about the door skip while I'm here, I've like mentioned this in general, but the conventional wisdom is to like line up between Sonic's feet with like the join here, where the 3 parts of the floor markings line up. So something like this, where you can see that the middle of Sonic's feet is right here. But I've typically found that if you are slightly closer than you think you need to be, it really helps the success rate of this door skip. Like, you can just, as long as you're in that general area, and as long as you are, like, a little closer than you need to be, it seems to work very consistently. Yeah, again, I'm terrible at this myself. Anyway, give me the checkpoint, dude. That works. So, the only reason that I ask about, like, doing this corner as quickly as possible is that if you round this corner at max speed, then the camera is going to get stuck inside the corner, and that's what creates these situations where you can typically die from, you know, the camera being stuck, and then you accidentally just, you know, fall into the void without even realizing. Like, I went around as quick as possible there, and you can see the camera got stuck right on cue. Whereas if I wait a little bit longer, then it gives the camera a little time to catch up. So this is one situation where there's nothing particularly wrong with, like, going a little slow to increase the consistency of it. You can also, that's another spot where you can just use camera control as well, but I typically just end up going a little later than it looks like is possible. Like, if it looks like I do that section slightly slower than I can, most of the time it's often because I deliberately am doing it a little slower than I can, just to make sure the camera plays ball. Because, like, the same thing there, it's like, there's so many camera issues that can get caused there. With getting on the rail there, it was very nice getting on the rail as clean as you did, because you didn't have a neutral camera here. By that I mean, like, once you're around here, like, the camera is angled so that you are having to manually calculate the angle. So this was definitely not free, getting on the rail, and there's multiple ways that it could have gone wrong. You'll notice that on my screen right now, I do pretty much have a neutral camera. And this is a method that I've, like, tried to work out myself by doing something like, I think by going more to the left here, you can see that it swings the camera around. So if you try and, like, take a straight line here, then, yeah, like, it causes this awkward camera angle. But my belief is that once you get around here, as long as you, like, traverse the halfway point, like, if you consider a halfway point on this Eggman face, as long as you go onto the left half, it gives you, like, a much straighter camera angle going towards the snake here. So again, another spot where it's a quote-unquote suboptimal line, because you're going further to the left than you need to, but it really helps line up that spin dash onto the snake rail, and you can hopefully just go straight up onto it as long as you are angled correctly. Oh, okay. Alright, this is, I mentioned like near the start about not holding the ball form in Metal Harbor. I mentioned not holding the ball form on flat slopes. The same thing is for when you're going on upslopes. So this, again, more runners get this wrong than right. So this isn't just you. Like, a lot of runners get this wrong. You should not be holding the ball form on an upslope like this. So once you let this spin dash go, shit, I muted the VOD rather than paused it. Doing the spin dash on the slope is correct, but then what you should be doing is immediately unrolling from the spin dash. So ball form here is, nah, don't do that. And it should instead look like this. So let's just assume, for instance, even, because I can even like hit it with the bounce as you did. So you're going to end up in this sort of situation. What you should just immediately do here is a bounce excel, and this will make you end up on the slope as well. Like, you'll still get the spin dash here, either way. But then once you do the spin dash, you just want to immediately unroll from it and charge another one. Because as well as making you go a bit faster up this slope, it also helps you stick so that you don't just come off the hill here. I've seen so many instances where people just let this spin dash go, and then you just come off this hill. I really don't understand fully what dictates whether you stick to this floor, because sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And I see like a lot of people just release a spin dash like that, and they just... Currently I'm sticking to the floor a lot because the game is just deciding to, but I'm sure you've had lots of situations where Sonic just comes off the floor. But I've found that if you're in this position where you start a spin dash from here, and then charge another one over the crest of the hill, it really helps you stick to the floor. And you can just do 3 quick spin dash charges to reach that position. Because then the third one should set you up nicely for doing this super bounce here, which the way you're angling here is definitely correct. You ideally want to do this super bounce from the floor, from this floor vertex, rather than being on the slope here. Like, you still can do it from the slope here, but it's significantly harder and riskier, in my opinion. And then, yeah, if you can do that, best way to deal with that. Oh boy, yeah, you just bounced way too late there. The position that you were starting the actual gravity bounce from looked pretty nice. Typically, I go by these joining parts between the bricks. Like, you're going to pass this one, and then you did it pretty much on the next joining point after this one. Yeah, like, if you're around this area, either at this point or slightly before it, then this is a good angle for this gravity bounce. But you can pretty much just release it as soon as you get off there. Like, you just held this and delayed the bounce way, way too long. And it almost caused a death. Yeah, that was close. So I'm in the right spot here, so I should hopefully just be able to demonstrate this. So again, I'm close to the spot, and you can just bounce immediately, and it should work without too much problem.
Sometimes I just fuck that up.
Oh, you spammed it? Wow.
Chat.
Interesting.
No problem. PictoChat's hazards off is basically like Omega Wily Castle. But like smaller blast zones. Oh god, there's so many stages.
Okay, if you're playing on 16.9, which most people do, you can potentially check for bugs on patrol as the stage spawns in. Like, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there's a few frames where like you can see the edge of the piece in the top right. It's overwhelmingly likely that you just don't have it here, but yeah. So the 2 normal free piece checks. But just be aware that on 16.9 you can technically check for the piece as you're spawning in. So Shoebox is a first piece that I like. This is a Death Abuse piece as well, so 0 rings. I'm going to see if you're going to go for a Death Abuse here. Looks like it. Oh, maybe not. Oh, you are. Okay. Going for the torch. I hadn't considered... Normally I use the ghost, but that works. Okay, nice. Filtered. So what I would recommend in this situation is, because you're just going towards blue, you may as well have just hit the hourglass while you were waiting for the hint to be active. Like, you've got downtime, there's nothing you can really do while you're waiting for the hint, so you may as well just hit the hourglass, because now you need to go in that direction anyway.
That's like blue.
Yeah, I think you just forgot which one you were going for there. But even if you knew which way you were going, you'd still have needed to then hit the hourglass when it could have already been active. Nice little corner climb there. This, yeah, lacking a little bit of height there though, so you needed to use another jump. But overall, this is, yeah. I wouldn't be unhappy with that death chamber.
Okay.
Not by a long shot.
Okay, this round. Learning where you need to be and like tunnel
King Boom Boo.
stay right below the line of hieroglyphics. That's like there's a band of them near the bottom.
So,
You wanna stay, like,
IGT, there's no reason to not use a restart here. I mean, you have the lives for it. If you're on 0 lives, you can't use a restart, but this is just one of those bosses where you can use a restart to abuse the in-game timer to save up to about 0.8 seconds. So if you just know how to pause in the first few frames and restart, it's just free time save.
bottom line of it, and then for the next hallway, you want to stay like
So
right on.
fireball skip is definitely something you can like consider learning, but if you're not going to go for it, then I can just look at this as a skipless King Boom Boo. The timing there wasn't too bad. This can maybe be like a few tenths faster, potentially. The timing that I typically look at for the pace, it's not for all bosses, no Emerldd. I'm specifying in the cases when you can use it, so you can do it on Bigfoot, but it can cause problems with Armor Chow breaking the boxes, and then King Boom Boo is the next opportunity to really do it. But anyway, so the pace that I typically use for King Boom Boo, or what I use to judge the pace, again, considering this is a skipless, is I look at the in-game timer, and the camera view where it goes to the skybox. If that happens before 20 seconds, then you're generally on good pace. So that was like pretty much dead 20 that it happened there, maybe like a couple of frames before. So a few tenths can probably come off this with reaching the ghost faster, but like it's difficult to optimize that, because obviously if you go towards the ghost too early, then you're just going to waste a lot of time. But that wasn't too bad. This, I've definitely seen people do this section worse. Nice getting out of the ground there as well. These punches are quite nice, and yeah, that was actually quite well timed, and I'm not sure if there's a specific method that you're using to time it, but I am going to reiterate the timing method that I've recommended for other people before, which is that every time he lands, he's going to flash red like 5-6 times, and after those flashes, they come slow enough that you can just count along with them. Exactly, 5 blinks. But I'm just going to like show this just for everyone's benefit, really, who's potentially watching this. So you punch him, and he's flashing red. And so after he's landed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then punch again. He like runs out halfway through the 6th one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then punch. Yep, pretty good again. And then just the last one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then punch again. So that was like the slowest one, like the flashes were slowest there. But the timing is still generally correct, and they're slow enough that you can do that in RTA at full speed, and it's still slow enough to count up with. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 punch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 punch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 punch. And that should provide you with some pretty consistent timing for getting those. So a pretty sound King Boom Boo. It does show as well about what I've said about the hourglass hit probably could have been a few tenths faster, and that shows in that you got a 45. Like before I started using Fireball Skip, I would have considered for me a really good King Boom Boo to be like 44.7, 44.8. So yeah, like up to a few tenths can come off this. But that means it's already pretty good. Oh, just not good. Okay, an immediate restart. This happens. It's, I mean, It's interesting here that you're not getting the light dash as soon as the fight starts, because thankfully this is another one of those story scenes where the game starts on Egg Golem, and what you'll typically see, like a lot of people doing, me included, is that they get the light dash. Just like that. So, yeah, I don't know. Just, it's interesting that's not happening. It doesn't really make a difference. It's maybe slightly slower that you're not getting the light dash, but of course, the fastest that you can manage is to not light dash at all and do a super bounce from the starting position, but I would not recommend anyone try that because the super bounce is probably frame perfect. If it's not frame perfect, it will be a 2-frame window from your starting position. Like, it's really, really hard to get a super bounce from this position. I've done it like maybe once or twice in IL attempts and it didn't lead to anything. It's stupid to go for that. Yeah, this is a bit of a struggle. Egg Golem just really be like this sometimes. Obviously, every time you fall on the sand, the correct play is to restart because it's faster than getting back up via the pulley, especially under IGT. But then after getting the first super bounce hit, after you've damaged him, it's not better to restart from falling in the sand again because there's of course no guarantee that you're going to get more hits repeatedly again.
Okay, you should give me the slam now.
Yep, 3 hits, so he gives you the head smash hit. Awkward position to end up in, though. Yeah, I'm not really sure what to advise there, because that's a very different position that you ended up in there. I'll take another look at this, but this is not what I expect to normally happen after the head smash hit. Yeah, because normally you'd expect to like go in the other direction. So again, I can't see what direction you're holding the control stick, but I'm going to assume that in this situation you're holding it right or upright. I mean, it certainly looked like you were immediately trying to go to the right when you homing attack there. I'm going to assume that the same rules apply as in a normal situation, except it's just mirrored. And in that case, I'm just going to start this from the start. So, assuming that this is going to be the same, then what you actually typically want to happen is that hopefully I'm going to get launched towards his arm after this hit. Come on, dude, move. Thank you. Oh, no, okay. Let's just do this from a 0 restart. I'm getting a lot of bounces right now. This is good. Yeah, that happens a lot. Thanks, game. Oh yeah, this looks alright. Wow, that's uncommon of me. Okay, so I'm going to land on the arm. So what I mean by it probably being mirrored in the other direction is that, in other words, now I'm going towards the right, and typically what I see a lot of runners doing and what you might expect is the right thing to do is right now to be holding left or down left to just try and stay on the arm. But that actually causes more problems than solutions. What you instead want to be doing, like in this situation, since I'm going to the right, I actually want to be holding down right as I land on the arm, and then I can do a rotation, a clockwise rotation to down left, and then left, and then up left. So just start from down right and then do a clockwise rotation. So likewise, assuming the same is true in the other direction, you would want to be holding down left when you land on his arm going towards the left, and then do an anti-clockwise rotation to where you want to be at the spin dash jump angle. And hopefully I'm going to do this and it is going to let me have full control of Sonic. I'll stay on his arm and I'll just be in prime position to do the spin dash normally. Like you see there where I'm in full control of Sonic, whereas there's a lot of players who can attest to just landing on the arm while holding left or down left, and they just skid and they fall off the arm. That's typically what happens. I don't like fully understand why it happens, but it's just something you can do to pretty consistently gain control of Sonic immediately.
Are you serious? This game's cheeks. Get me on the fucking pulley, Sonic. What are you doing?
And yes, Egg Golem will consistently break the platforms in one hit if it's a orange platform. The orange platforms are the breakable ones. The blue ones are non-breakable. So the orange ones will also break after being lowered twice by fist attacks. Like, they'll break in 3 fist attacks or 1 head smash, but the blue ones will never disappear.
Yeah, and that's why I don't like using.
Alright, so this is probably going to be, yeah, that newfangled skip that all the kids are talking about nowadays.
Doable. I mean, there's a ton of runners who do it with the notches. It's just, I don't.
Again, those lock-ons is just practice that section is all I can really say. I hate those screens as well, and I've only gotten good at that from practicing that hundreds of times. Yeah, so it's this method. Yeah. I don't really like this method for external engine, but I mean, if it works for you, it works for you. But mileage really varies with this. I'm sure I'll have shown you before, like, the method that I specifically use, but I'll just, again, revisit it for general educational purposes, since it is a good alternative to be able to run with. Also, you can potentially get by here without jumping at all, and just try and get these enemies early. The doors just suck, though. So I'm going to get the checkpoint anyway. And I need my game feed also. So I'll just get the checkpoint. So, one of the main reasons that I don't really like the approach that you were using here is because this section can cause you to slow down if you get the wrong collision here. So you can just run along here, but I've had situations where I used to try and use this strat myself, but having just the wrong angle or the wrong collision here can just cause problems like that when you really don't need it. If you can consistently avoid that, then it's yeah, fine, this can work for you, and this can definitely work. But the specific method that I like to try and use, I'm going to demonstrate here on the right, is you end up using the laser as a visual cue for which direction to run. And you want to run along this red edge here of the floor markings, and once you reach the second one at the corner, you start moving towards the boxes. So I'll just get the laser, and then you use the laser to judge where to go. You can see currently that the laser is aiming just ahead of the boxes, it's on the wall. It's not quite touching the boxes, it's just about. So it could do with being a little further to the left, kind of like this. I'm not in a very good starting position though. So I'm going to kill myself and try it again on the right hand side. Because this is just a very militarized and disciplined way to try and take this skip. So this is about where I need to be. You can see the laser is angling just to the right of the boxes. And then the idea is that once Tails gets to this floor marking, that his feet are pretty much inside now, that you just jump and shoot at the same time. And hopefully it bears some results. Why can't I get out of bounds? You can see that the collision was trying to work there. But yeah, as I mentioned, this skip, it really is just a case of if you have a method that works for you, then use that. Because in runs, and especially in races, you just want to get this skip first try. The important thing isn't that you get this skip as fast as possible. The important thing is that you get this skip. Because, if you start missing it and if you're resetting the stage to get more attempts at it, you start bleeding a lot of time. So if you have a method that looks weird or it takes another half a second to perform, if it works for you and you actually have a higher success rate with it, then stick with that. I'm not going to be talking too much about just the going towards the goal ring, since it is mostly just, you know, a thing. I can say that I typically try and fly fairly parallel to the stage. So in other words, you are currently flying away from the stage rather than parallel to it. But that's, if you're still able to find the goal ring, then that's fine, I suppose. You're just taking a bit of a wider path, which is going to add like some seconds. Okay. Yeah, you found it. So it is what it is. You got the skip, my son. Alright. Last RNG stage.
On the proper part
Meteor Turd.
for the inclined surface, Conrad.
Okay, 2 stone platforms. So I'm not sure whether you were trying to do this, but another small movement optimization you can be going for generally with Knuckles is the instant wall grab, which is performed by letting go of the glide frames before you hit the wall. And this is applicable everywhere. So if I just glide straight into the wall, then there's this tiny delay before Knuckles can start climbing. But if I try and release the glide just before I hit the wall, hopefully he's going to start climbing immediately. Like that. And that's going to like save tenths. Like a tenth, maybe 2 tenths-ish every time you do it. Which sounds like not much, and individually it isn't very much, but again, if you can do that like every time you're about to contact the wall, that's going to save like seconds across a run. Yeah, that's just caused by letting go of the glide just before you contact the wall. The 3-piece check that you can do here, this is actually super important. This is applicable almost all the time. The 3-piece check for wandering between the 2nd and 3rd levels. So, I take the spring here, and as you should all know, wandering between the 2nd and 3rd levels is going to be around this spot. But the problem that you have is that the camera isn't very well situated here to check for it, and once you end up here and grabbing the rocket, you don't have a good view of where it is. What you can do in this situation is use a combination of the camera triggers to force a good checking position. If you hold R, the camera tilted there because I was holding R to tilt the camera in this direction. Now if I also hold L, it fixes the camera looking in this direction. So I was holding R, now I'm also holding L. I'm holding down L and R, and now I'm going to unpause, and the camera is not going to move from this position. That you can see that you just get a solid look in that direction. So since the piece is like in this area, it gives you a very long view of where the piece is. So that 3-piece check is literally a 3-piece check. You can see that you checked for floating in front of 3 tanks, which definitely isn't incorrect, but you arguably spent maybe a little too much time checking for it. So this is a habit that I need to break myself, but this is a good example of the same thing I've mentioned before about punching off surfaces rather than jumping and gliding. Say like you got the hint here and you saw that your second piece was at the bottom. So rather than just jumping, gliding and drill diving like this, if you can just get into the habit of it, it's slightly better to just punch and, you know, start drill diving like that. It's just a little habit that you can potentially get into. Excuse me.
Are you serious?
After this piece, I would go for a different hint. So I would just go for this hint here. It's going to be slightly faster, and then like as you curve around here, it's likely that you're going to need to go back up, and then you'll have the slope jump off this, hopefully with a bit more speed. Let's try this again. So, oh, I got the hint, and then yeah, you can end up like around here, and then just go up towards the spring like that. It's, yeah, finicky. Oh, nice last piece though. Maybe just work on the smoothness of your movement here, because that was actually, considering the straight path that you needed to take there, that was actually quite jerky. Like, let's just assume you're in this situation. Let's just go. Middle of Royal St. Beacon. Oh, cool. Like, you can just take very gradual turns to get to where you need to be. You can turn really gradually in this stage. Meteor Herd's a good stage for generally just practicing your movement like this with using really gradual ground direction changes. Ah, I slowed down. Like, there's a lot of obstacles on the ground around this stage, and you can just practice using smooth turns like this. You know, stuff like this. It's generally just quite a useful stage for practicing ground movement, because it's the most open knuckle stage there is. Not bad though. I would like a 44, because that would save about 7 seconds of what I've got in my PB. Bad RNG is definitely a thing. Alright, Rogue. Rogue. The Rogue. So, this is a better shot at ringless than I've seen quite a few other people use. But you can still be squeezing it a little more. The important thing to remember with Rouge is that if you're going to be going for ringless, you want to be going for her as soon as you have control of Knuckles, and that is pretty much exactly at 8 on the in-game timer. Like, once the boss text disappears, you have control of Knuckles, and if you pay attention to the timer in the top left, it's going to be pretty much dead on 8 seconds. Yeah. So, you jumped at like 8.3, so you could have been like a couple of tenths of a second faster. Waiting for the camera turn typically is not that productive. I think just because of the amount of time wasted, you can still get the hit, and you can pretty much have caused damage to Rouge pretty much before this point, really, or by the time the camera has panned around. But as it is, you're still flying towards her and waiting. It's still a relatively fast hit. Like I say, it's faster than I've seen most people do it. But there's still easily like some tenths that can be coming off this. Yeah. I'm typically not a huge fan of just repeatedly drill diving her like this, just because it requires far more inputs and you spend more time on the ground. Both of those things just increase the likelihood that a mistake is going to happen, but you know, most people get away with it and it doesn't punish people that often. But if you've seen me do this boss, I typically just prefer to jump around her and time my drill dives, which I'm specifically using her voice lines to time when to do the drill dive for each one. But if this method works for you, then it definitely works for you. I just think this introduces a little bit of unnecessary risk into the fight. Like, at this point in the run, my modus operandi is to think, I just want to complete the run. I'm past Eternal Engine, I'm past the last RNG of the game. I want to just complete the run as risk-free as possible. So I just eliminate as many risks as I possibly can from the run at this point. And just jumping around Rouge is a good way to do that, because her AI is really passive as long as you are airborne. So there was quite a large jerk that you did there to get around the enemy. So you can maybe just consider practicing the movement for the start of this stage, because I think you could have been almost as straight as you were going, but just curving a little bit around the enemy. This is just quite a large curve, and it probably cost at least a couple of tenths of a second to do that. What I think personally you should be doing here as well is a bounce excel once you land here. Like, rather than just do a spin dash like that, I personally like to do a bounce excel. Like that. And then just a single spin dash, which you then immediately cancel, so that you are, again, not holding the ball form on a flat surface. So that you instead, please. So that you instead just run and then just bounce. And you end up in like the same sort of situation, but it's all these just like tiny little refinements. And then, yeah, the weird gravity bounce. It still works though. And I believe what I'm seeing here is you just flew off the edge here and then you bounced in midair. Let's just double check this again. I'm going to slow this down again. Please, camera. Yeah, you can see that Sonic is clearly moving forward, and then this bounce happens while you're midair. I believe it's slightly better here to actually do a double bounce. So, like, once I... Will the camera follow me? So, like, once you are here, you want to spin dash in this direction, like, as you did. But you want to just do this, basically, so that the first bounce is on the lip of the ledge, and the second one is after you've passed the ledge, kind of like this. I think this results in a faster fall, personally. It may mean as well that you might have to like do some readjustment of your muscle memory and timing for when to then go into that next hallway, since you will be going faster than you're used to. But okay, spring skip, nice. That was a little awkward there, though. I'm going to need to take another look at what happened here. I think you just bounced again there. I can't exactly see what happened there because of the camera. I'll try turning the volume up. Maybe I'll be able to hear what happens. Yeah, I think you just bounced again because I didn't hear a homing attack in that time. Because typically what I try to do there is to use a bounce excel. But obviously to bounce excel you use a homing attack. And I didn't hear a homing attack there, so I think you just bounced without homing attacking. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, if you don't want to take the rail there, like, it can be awkward, so I'm not going to blame you too much for that, for sure. Ooh, got a CGSS. Yeah, I'll take another quick look at this. Again, there's no input cam here, but that looked like it was just a very quick direction jerk, I think, because it looks like you actually slowed down quite a bit before you even reached the kill plane there, to me. I'm not like entirely sure what happened there. You definitely hit the first kill plane though, because the camera didn't quite reach the wall. Yeah, like if the camera had like fully reached the wall, and that would indicate that it was the second kill plane you'd hit there. Excuse me again. Work. Nice. Okay. Yeah. Looking good. Okay, a pause extend I can see. Ooh, that's early. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that one for sure. I was not convinced by how early you homing attack there after the bounce. I prefer to hold the bounce for a lot longer. I'll just say that much.
Thought I did it perfectly, dude.
The angle was generally very good. It's just the distance was just slightly lacking there, which is a real shame. Come on, dude, this time. And yeah, this is not really like related to the strats that you're doing or like what you're typically doing in the game here, but this movement that you did after this respawn here, this looks to me like you're at this point like tilting. I think this, like, you're starting to get in your own head here, because this is just like, obviously there's a lot of you know, extraneous stuff going on here, so it's really important, if you can, to just try and stay clear-headed, because, you know, now it's going to make hitting CGSS itself harder as well. I can totally understand the position you're in, but it is so valuable to just try and compartmentalize as much as you can and just think, you know, it doesn't matter, it is what it is, and just don't panic, because it just makes everything harder to do if you start tilting.
Why have you forsaken me, buddy?
Here we go, though. This looks better. This looks like a much straighter path. Yeah, this is definitely making it. You're going to be a bit high, though. Okay.
We're still ahead.
Made it, though. Yeah, the fall there was a lot straighter. Like, I saw a lot less of Sonic wiggling around during the long fall angle, which indicates that that one was going to end up in the right spot. I haven't really seen people use a pause extension there, though, which is interesting. It certainly helped, though. You, in fact, almost ended up past the goal ring for that last attempt, so you almost ended up, like, being too far along from the pause extension.
That's fine. We still got the tricks.
Anyway, let's see Eggman. So, what I would recommend for the start of Eggman is, I mentioned with Eggman 1 that ideally you want to be facing straight up before you fire the first shot. That is just to make sure the first shot lands as quickly as possible, but the purpose is different in Eggman 2 if you're going to use this method. And that is because Eggman 2 moves away as soon as you fire your first shot. So, like you'll notice here, like as soon as that shot flies, he just starts moving. And this angle is not correct in itself to hit Eggman. Like, this first shot missed, but if you had fired the shot in this direction that you're facing now, this is the correct direction to be in. So if you'd waited until you were fully facing this direction and fired the first shot, you would have hit him with the first shot. It's like a minor thing, but it's not only a case of wanting to get the hits as fast as possible, but because this guy moves around so much and he's so erratic, you're going to increase the chances of hitting him with any specific shot if all of your shots are going in the right direction. Like, this is just as much about having as many opportunities to hit him as hitting him as soon as possible, if that makes sense. So, if you are going to use this method, you can definitely stand to exploit his AI a bit more. Because when you hit him, he's going to respond, like, all the time with, like, I think it's like 6 or 7 no-scope shots. If you listen to his Vulcan cannon, you're going to see what I mean after you land the first shot. I've boosted the volume again here. So you can see there that he fires 6 shots. And that's going to be a consistent pattern from him. So if you know to expect that, then you can actually exploit it, because he's going to stand in place when he's doing that. And he's a sitting duck. He's always going to be straight up from where you are. And so you can just count his shots out as they're happening. And then when the 6th shot comes, you can just face up and fire your own shot towards him. And what's likely going to happen is that you're both going to trade hits. But since you've already damaged him, if you just trade hits back and forth, you're going to win in a damage race. So just once again. 6, and then he starts moving off again. So you can pretty much fire as he fires the 6th shot, and that should always be like correctly timed so that you'll hit him right as his iframes run out. And it's the same thing again here. So he's currently firing his 3rd shot here. And then, well, he continues firing here, but it's after his 6th shot comes out that the laser comes out. You do have an opportunity here to land another shot as he's firing the laser. If I slow this like right down, then you're going to be able to see his iframes flashing. And you're also going to be able to see when they end. There's about half a second between his iframes ending and the laser actually coming out. Like, you see that gap there? When slowed down, it's very obvious how much time there is where he's just sitting there completely vulnerable. And again, he's going to be firing his no-scope shots so he doesn't move in this time. So if you're just circle strafing him and you know when to move up, which is to say after like the 5th shot, like 4th, 5th shot at this point, then you can just exploit the fact that he's sitting there, and you can get another shot off before the laser even comes out. So you can already at this point have actually landed the 3rd hit. So I'll just run this back a little bit. Like, there is an opportunity to get it there. So this can basically be your last hit. And you can consistently exploit that. But overall, still, I mean, a 21 is, for me, is I would consider that like, oh, I'm losing a few seconds, but, you know, it is what it is. And you're losing a few seconds on your splits as well, so it seems that you do typically get better than that, which is nice. It's just a few things to consider in the fight, like make sure that you're facing the right direction before you start firing your shots, and learn to expect his own no-scope shots coming in like groups of 6, and work around that, like use it to build a rhythm, and then you can counterattack him quite safely. That's how I like consistently get 14s and 15s, because I'm utilizing his AI against him.
Oh, yikes.
Oh, brutal. Alright, let's actually look at this from the start. Ish. I mean, getting on this rail was a little slow, but nah. No checkpoint there either, that's hairy. I want to see like exactly how narrowly you missed the checkpoint by here. This is why I often just bounce through the checkpoint here, or I try to. Oh, God, yeah, that was so close. Like, how did you miss that? Oh well. this is a shame as well. Like, I I don't know exactly what your thought process was when this happened, because you had a perfectly viable setup for the bounceless skip, and then the gravity was just immediately reset. So I don't know if you just didn't know how to play with that, and then the gravity reset because you didn't react, or if you actively realized, I have bounceless, but I don't know how to do it, so I need to reset the skip. Like, either way, it's a difficult situation because you could have ran with this attempt and you could have gotten the skip with this attempt. This is kind of why, like, I often urge runners to at least know how to do the bounce skip and the bounceless. Like, it's perfectly fine to have a preference. I see a lot of people like, oh, I use the bounce and it's faster than bounceless anyway, so I don't want to use bounceless. And, you know, that's fine in principle, but you're gonna eventually end up with situations like this where you accidentally get the wrong one. And in those situations, there's no reason to not know how to do the other one. Like, you should really know how to recognize it, react to it, and do it accordingly. Because this is, unfortunately, a death that you didn't really need to take. This is like a 22-second time loss that could have just been avoided if you'd be like, okay, this is what I've got, and now I need to play with it.
I would just fall and die, so...
Yeah, like, with it being nerves and being at this point in the run on potential PB pace, I can totally understand that, believe me. This is just something that, more runners generally like need to be aware of, because there are a lot of runners who just flat out don't know how to do bounceless, and then they end up in the similar situation you were there, where they accidentally get the bounceless gravity jump, and they just don't know how to do it. So then they take a death there, and it's losing 20 seconds for no reason. But at this point, this is now a bounceless skip. So the most you guys are getting out of this final rush analysis is, this is a good example of why it's important to be able to fluently do both of the skips. Like, I don't disagree with people saying I just do bounce because it's faster, because, like, yes, it is faster, but it's really worth knowing how to do bounceless, because you will lose less runs.
LMAO.
The time save, though, 23 seconds ahead. Alright. Shadow 2, the grand finale. Oh, I know bounceless is the way you used to do it, because I've, like, you know, the guy I provided the chart for estimating your angle. Yeah.
Not over yet.
Okay, dude, here we go. Shadow. Alright, already there's a couple of things I'm noticing here. Okay, so an 18, like, obviously it's a successful shadow. The, you can refine the way that you're starting this fight to help get more consistent fights, though. And it's very easy to demonstrate this on Dark Story, because the final scene of Dark Story is on the Sonic 2 fight, and it is identical to the Shadow fight. It's just that your positions are reversed. So the main thing that I've noticed the way you start the Shadow fight is that you can start inputs a lot sooner, and it does create a more consistent fight. Like, if you notice how soon I jumped there, this is similar to what I talked about with Rouge, where you gain control of Knuckles at about 8 on the clock. You also gain control of Shadow or Sonic in Hero Story at 6 on the clock. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to restart. And I'm going to try putting my controller, like, right up to the microphone, and you're going to hopefully be able to hear me doing the A inputs. And I'm going to do it in time with the timer ticking up. And you can see how I got the jump at the 6-second one. If I do it, I'll try and do it a bit before the second, and I'm not going to get it this time. Notice how I didn't get it that time. So, at pretty much dead on 6 on the clock is when you gain control of the character, and you can use that to set up your first hit. Just tap up with the timer. And then just act on the first one. And if you notice, in, like, your VOD, you, like, got Shadow around this spot or just after it. So you can see that you can end up getting the boss considerably sooner. Like, considerably sooner. And this actually makes the fight safer, because the timing of when you get the hit and where you generally end up fighting them affects when the platforms start falling. If I was a bit further back here, this platform would now start falling, and likewise if I was on the next platform, like on the back half, it would start falling. But this platform currently should not start falling immediately if I'm in the right spot, and I think I am. Yeah, it's the one behind me that's falling right now. You can see that the one behind me is the one that's going down. So one more time.
Alright, Shadow. Time for me to finish this.
And that's the late one. Still the one behind me that's going down though, thankfully. So let's just try and grind out. Really good start.
Alright, Shadow. Time for me to finish this.
Messed up start of inputs. Wow! That's new. Someone clip that.
Alright, Shadow. Time for me to finish this.
I want to see that happen on a world record pace run. So a couple of other concepts that I need to talk about in this fight is there was two specific things that I wanted to mention. So number one is the what is it actually? There are two things that I was gonna talk about. Yeah, okay, that's right. Making sure the first hit connects, because you saw that I was getting bad starts of fights where I wasn't catching up to Sonic properly. You can typically mitigate this by attacking from the right place. So if I just try a regular normal attack from behind him, it took me a while to catch up there, but I honestly thought I wasn't really going to catch up with him there. This first hit can be weird, but typically what you can try and do to prevent something happening is to jump to the opposite side. So currently I'm jumping above and to the left of him, and on the opposite fight you've seen a lot of runners do, you jump up and to the right of Shadow, and you attack from there. And as long as you have a lot of height especially, it helps you accelerate towards the boss. Get a quick hit like that. And the other thing that I want to mention is the importance of using neutral stick in this fight. Like, again, I don't have a controller cam up, so you can't see my inputs, but you're going to have to take my word that when I'm doing these hits, I'm using neutral stick. I'm using the control stick to set up the first hit, but then once I get the first hit, the rest of the fight is done with neutral stick, unless I need to use a stick direction to recover. And the reason for this is partly based on what you see on the screen right now. The fact that the camera is slanted, like it's not facing directly up. So if I just continue to hold up, it's going to cause problems where I'm getting out of alignment, especially if the game judges that at any point I've ended up slightly ahead of Sonic, because it follows the same camera rule as like all the other boss fights, where the game is going to try to keep the boss on camera at all times. And so if you end up in quote-unquote front of the boss, then the camera fully inverts to keep the boss on screen. So if you're holding up, then you're just going to end up going backwards. And that can end up getting you in situations where you can get yourself killed. So it makes the hits harder to get because you're not directly behind the boss, and it can result in situations where you're just taking deaths for no reason. So neutral stick is super important in these fights. For reference, like I'm going to do a fight here where I'm going to continue to hold up, and like I'll probably still get it, but it's probably going to make it harder than it needs to be. Already I'm out of position here, and like again you can see how the camera semi-inverted there, and if I wasn't paying attention I would have just continued to go right off the stage. So one more time with up input.
Alright, Shadow. Time for me to finish this.
Yeah, it played ball pretty well there, but you cannot necessarily rely on it at all times. Like I say, neutral stick is super helpful here. But that is a speedrun. That is by IGT, 2628, and a RTA of 3802.
Nor is it the PB that I
So,
deserve.
yeah, thank you very much for agreeing to let me look at this, Emerldd. I think this was a really constructive analysis, personally. I think I had like a lot of stuff to go on in this, and some
I'm super
nice concepts to talk about.
satisfied with this PB, though.
And I will be highlighting this so that
Dude, it's
you can refer back to it. And I will, with your permission, I'll be like exporting it to YouTube if you're fine with that.
time, I guess.
And of course, anyone else who's like around this PB region, like 38, can also learn from this. If you yourself would like me to look at your PB,
One step at a
then you can of course just DM me, and we can like try and work something out. Playing an 18 seconds dance game.